Between the time when the ocean games were playable and the rise of the Commodore 64, there was an age of brown. And unto this, Adrian, destined to play the dog eggs of gaming misery so no one else had to. It is I, his co-host, who alone can tell thee of his trauma. Let me tell you of the days of text adventures.
Welcome to the Golden Breadbin Awards for 1990. Yeah, it's that time of the year again where we get to look over the past, was it? I think it was 29 episodes or 20-something. Was it 29? No, 26. It's 20-something episodes where we have looked at all the games released that were reviewed in Zzap 64 over the period of 1990. I'm
Correct.
sure you've just been probably, maybe, possibly bedazzled by Graham's usual epic intro. I don't know. Maybe you have. Maybe you haven't. I don't know what he does. I don't know. He goes away and does magic of those intros, so who knows?
I don't know if I'm going to do one.
I don't know if you've done one. Did you do one? We don't know.
I don't
Maybe
know
it wasn't.
yet.
We don't know. I don't know. So you could have just been, listen, it could just be straight in with me, and it could just be Graham going with a kazoo or something.
I'm very tempted to do that.
Welcome. And there you go. So yeah, so this is the Breadbin Awards for 1990. We have less than 2 years left of the magazine.
That's it.
At this point. This is our sixth, I believe this is our sixth Breadbin Awards, isn't it? 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90. Yeah, I can count. I was even counting on my fingers then.
On one hand, please note.
It was one hand. That's why I'm such a good guitarist. I can play chords that don't exist. And things like that. Yes, so this is the Breadbin Awards. We're probably going to, vote for games that you don't like. You thought should have been there. We're probably going to ignore games that you did like, and things like that. But we're going to follow it. Yeah, because that's us. But we don't do it on purpose. Our rationale is always, generally, does it play well? And that's usually where we're coming from with most of the things that we do. So not about other bits and bobs, maybe good. And they will get recognised in their own categories.
They will indeed.
But overall, does it play well? It's one of the things we sort of look for. So, Graham, we've got some stats. Would you like some stats?
We always need the Breadbin Stats.
The Breadbin Stats?
The Breadbin Stats. We always need the Breadbin Stats.
The Breadbin Stats? Would you like some stats?
We always need the Breadbin Stats.
There is one award at the beginning there, which is the Best Naked Dawn Bike Riding Award, which goes to the mountain bike racer loading screen there.
Yeah, and the more I look at that image, the more I realise there's no saddle on that bike.
You were completely wrong about that saddle.
Yeah, it's taking the saddle. The bike's got no spokes, so how those tyres staying on, we'll never know.
It's a very, very, very odd bike.
It is. Well, because if it's standing still, which it might be, then the wheels wouldn't be moving, so you would see the spokes. You'd hope
to see the spokes, but maybe not at C64 resolution.
Maybe not, but that saddle sure looks painful. Plus, he's also got one leg.
Pedaling a bike with one leg must be quite hard work.
You got to push and pull. It's not easy. And if you get well off balance, you'd be all over the place.
Unless he's got one of those kind of fixed, do you know those fixed pedal bikes that people had at a certain point? Where they're like, they don't, I don't know how to describe them, but if you put your foot on the pedal, it sort of lifts you up and down like a piston, I guess. But I don't advocate that kind of bike. Bikes, I don't know, pedals should spin, I think.
I think so. I think that's a prerequisite for a bike.
I'm no physicist, but clearly.
On this podcast, Graham, we obey the laws of thermodynamics.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
So yes, damn you to hell. Anyway, let's have some stats. Can you guess? And you're probably looking at this, so you probably know. But for our listeners, how many games we looked at this year? There were 143. So it's down quite a lot from last year's 186, and certainly down from the massive highs of 88 and 87 with over 300 odd.
Yes.
So we're down to clearly in the twilight years at this point. Average number of games per month, though, there were 12. Just under 12 slightly, 143. 12 times 12 is 144. So it's 11.99 something recurring or whatever.
Yeah.
Highest scores? Well, they were held by Turrican and Space Rogue with 97%.
Yeah, gold medals apiece, I think.
They were both gold medals, yeah. Lowest score, though, 5% with Striker.
Now, in the lowest score, barrel, at the bottom of that dirty barrel, is 5% one of the lowest scores?
We've had threes. We've had 2 threes, I think. Robobolt, and I think maybe the Alice in Videoland was maybe a 3.
Yes. That's a low score.
It was. 5 is terrible, though. I would say 5 is too high for a game that wasn't a game.
Yeah, no argument from me. No.
So, there were 5 gold medals this year. 5.
Okay.
Which is interesting because there was Turrican, Space Rogue, Ghouls and Ghosts, Golden Axe, and Creatures.
Fair enough.
The last 3, Ghouls and Ghosts, Golden Axe, and Creatures, all got 96%.
The elusive, almost gold, but you are gold.
Yeah, it's more like gold.
Early days, it wasn't, was it?
Gold-coated chocolate award. It's the gold-coated chocolate medal award.
The golden chocolate.
Yeah, that's what they got. Space Rogue and Turrican, they got proper gold medals. 97%. 97% was always the gold medal, wasn't it?
Yes.
90 to 96 was your Sizzler. 97 plus was your gold medal. You can't be just arbitrarily knocking it down to 96.
No, you cannot.
Not on my watch. No. There were 19 Sizzlers this year.
Okay.
Compared to 22 last year. I presume. There were only 3 gold medals last year and 22 things. So it's actually more Sizzlers and gold medals, I think. No, there's one less. But if you took that as a percentage,
I was going to say
it's higher. They're higher because 24 awards out of 143 would be a higher percentage than 25 out of 186. So the percentage was higher this year. It's higher.
Nice.
So Brucey would be happy. He'd be go, is it higher or lower? It's higher.
He was always happy.
He was always happy. No silver medals, though, that I could note or that I could remember.
No.
Only 3 games scored under 20%.
Shocking.
That is shocking.
It is.
And I do count that. So 19 below compared to 13 last year.
Okay.
So 3%, only that means like that 2%. It's about 2% of games were less than 20%. I think it's low.
Fake. Fake news.
Yeah, pretty much. The average review score was 65%, which was up 5% on last year.
I'm sorry, I find that's I'm finding that difficult to swallow.
Yes, I am as well. And there was nothing that I noted that I remembered. Maybe there was something, but I didn't find it. That was joining the 99 club. Nothing. There was nothing of 99%. There you go. The first game reviewed that we looked at in issue 140 was Ghouls and Ghosts, and we ended the year with Puzznik.
We did.
Which means there's quite a lot. That does actually sum up. There was quite a lot of arcade conversions this year.
Yes, there was. In fact, 32.
32?
Which is 23% of all the games that came out.
God, that's like a quarter.
23% of all the games we reviewed. Yeah, exactly.
That's like a quarter of the games were arcade conversions.
Crazy, because I assembled some factoids for you, and that's one of the factoids.
Well, don't let me stop you, Graham. Let's have those factoids.
So that was the factoid, the fact that there was 32 arcade conversions, so 23%. The number of licensed games is 23, so that's the games attributed to license. That's only 16%. So that still means that you're just about 60% of the games were quote unquote original releases.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. The number of games that fell below 50% was 34, so 24%. And the number above 50% was 109, which is 76%. And what does all that mean? Well, what that means is that the if you compare it, there are more games that were reviewed by Zzap scored over 50% last year than they had before. So the trend is upward. But weirdly, that's not a great... I don't believe that's a really true fact. Do you feel like half the games you played were over 70-odd%? I don't believe that's really...
No.
So when you dive into the stats like this, it's good to sort of see them broken down into kind of the micro percentages, because it gives you a better flavor of the curve of the data that's in there. And from what I can see, it's bullshit.
My experience does not tally with those numbers. That's all I can say.
No, and yes, we can factor in a plus minus for our objectivity and things like that. But the fact remains, this is based upon the number of games and the attributable scores for them from Zzap. We have nothing to do with that. But all we have done is test that dynamic. We're testing those numbers, and I can tell you those numbers are bullshit. So we've proved it in a test that no, definitely there should be more games below 50%. So it's skewed. I would argue it's probably the other way around. I would say that in reality, 24% of the games should be over 50%.
Yes,
and
probably.
76 should be below. So it's kind of reversed. But we've said that all the way through this year about Zzap, that their reviews was completely skewed, and this is proving it. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was so. Yeah. Anything else, or is that the factoid?
No, that was just I just assembled some little factoids, little count-ifs, using a bit of magical spreadsheet shenanigans to do some cool shit.
Okay.
I don't know why really, but you do these things, don't we?
It's good. All good stuff for the Breadbin Awards. So before we get into them, do we normally do our sort of review of the year here, or do we do it at the end and before we go on to what we think?
I think we do it now. We don't talk about the games we're going to look at, because that's the whole point of the awards, and that would be stupid.
Yeah.
But we do a little bit of, what did you think kind of thing.
What's your thoughts, experience, and sort of overall impression of the year 1990 and the games, 143 games we've looked at?
Well, I thought that the games should have they started off reasonably well. So you actually have sort of a cluster of good games, and then it's just a kind of an overriding arch of average to crap, with the odd one in between. And I suppose what it's proving is that so there's a few things to think about. So firstly, by 1990, I was kind of really starting to tune out of the C64 anyway. Mm-hmm. So for me personally, I actually got sold my C64 in 1990. I'm not sure which month it was in, but I had traded that in and I'd upgraded to the Amiga at some point in 1990. Mm-hmm. So a significant proportion of these games I had no knowledge of or hadn't played any of them. So that meant I'm coming into some of this completely and utterly fresh, which, fresh-faced and slapped is how it's been. Some of the games that are well known for being good turned out, surprise, surprise, to be quite good. Some of the games turned out to be a complete surprise. There's at least 2 or 3 in there that were like, I just never heard of it, so I'd never even come across it. Mm-hmm. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff that just, you can see that the machine is coming to the end of its life. Now, I was hoping that when we entered 1990, the hurrah would happen. So people, and there are still a few people doing it, but that the machine would have a bit of a final hurrah moment, that the people would have got to a point of, code pinnacle, or at least at that point in 1990. So the code was getting better, the graphics teams were getting better, they were getting more out of the machine, and that the games would actually improve because of that. Mm-hmm. That didn't happen, not wholly. And what it proved was that most of the good coders, with the exception of a very few, or a small amount, had by this point jumped off to the Amiga, probably because that was where the money was. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
All it really left was there was a huge market that was still remaining for people to be exploited, and that's my prevailing thought of 1990, is that it's the year that the games companies really ripped people off with some utterly demonstratively awful releases that perhaps in some instances should never have even been put out onto cassette or whatever. Mm-hmm. And yet there they are, even at budget level. And we've seen in the charts over 1990 that the budget games have kind of just, ruled the roost. And it shows you that even the reissued budget games of the good games are doing better than the full price or even budget price of some of the newer games. So it just shows you that the new ones have very rarely got legs to stand on. Every now and again, we get a budget gem. Every now and again, and I mean every now and again, we had a really good game, but they were very few and far between. I was disappointed with 1990. I hoped that because of some of the games that are in there, some of those games have a very powerful reputation. Creatures, for example, it's got a fierce reputation for its graphics and its code and all that. I was hoping there'd be more of those because it's 1990, but there wasn't. Interesting one thing to note that I did spot, and just as an aside, one game that never featured in Zap, which came out in 1990, I believe, was a game called Gordian's Tomb. Gordian's Tomb, Rick Dangerous-like, really good graphics, a 30-minute soundtrack by Thomas Detert, who's an amazing musician, does film music and that now. So that's nowhere to be seen. We'll never see that as part of the remit of our Zap to the Past. So there's probably quite a few games. When I did a quick check-in on Lemon, there was about 200 and something plus games that came out, maybe even slightly more than that came out in 1990. So Zap, we're only reviewing probably 60 to 70% of the actual released games by this point, maybe even less than that.
Less than that, if there's 200, 200 in total?
Yeah, 230 odd, I think. So in total.
Okay.
And that's only the ones that I could sort of, because some of them slipped into 1991 a little bit because of the sort of the way that Zap works compared to release dates. But if you take that as a kind of, let's look at a sort of a small average, they're probably reviewing maybe 70%, or maybe less than that, maybe 70, let's be generous, 75%, 3/4 of the games that are being published are only being reviewed there. Some of the other magazines are getting a bit of a lion's share of that as well. But there's a great proportion of games that are getting no coverage from them. And also, remember, they diluted their own magazine by filling it full of Amiga stuff as well. So not only is the magazine less about C64, but also the games they're reviewing are less featured in a magazine called Zap 64, or Zap 64 Amiga, as they kind of try to rebrand it.
Yeah.
So I think they give a misleading view of some of the games that are out there. We can only go by what we see, but my experience of 1990 was generally very disappointing, with maybe, and often, as is the case with this particular podcast, bookended by some really good stuff. But what about you?
Yeah, I'm fairly the same, really, sort of thing. It's an inverse bell curve, hasn't it, been this year, where it started out quite well, and then just nosedived down. Had a little sort of pickup with a couple of games, but then sort of came back a little bit towards the end. But even then, there's some real stinkers, and I think, it's clear that a lot of the talent has buggered off. A lot of the names, and also as well, not just that, but the kind of the coders we kind of think had switched sort of focus. Like Martin Walker has now become a musician by this point because he wasn't getting paid. He wasn't getting paid for games. He was royalties, so he always knew he would get paid for doing the music, and that's a sad indictment. And I think we've also seen, we saw this last year, with certain companies getting the bump up tax on the review scores, and we've seen it especially in some games, and obviously we'll probably cover some of those games in this episode as we sort of give various awards. But I think there's been some very shifty shenanigans with certain games and certain companies and certain titles. Not just in this, and it's also, I think the magazine's gone through a weird change as well. It's lost a lot of its sense of identity about what made it Zap. I think by this point, it feels like a bit of it doesn't really know where I don't know. Looking at it now, I mean, I never read these issues back in the day. I'd given up reading Zap by about issue 50 odd. So by looking at them now, it feels like a very, very different magazine. And it just feels like, and we've said this, it's like, no, the C64 is still great, which I think leads to this, what you say about over 70% getting the 50% plus, because if you're honest with them, even at the time, you'd have gone, they're not really. This isn't great. And you probably should have been honest, but I think it was a case of just trying to keep the market afloat and sort of say, no, there are still some good games. And it is interesting that you sort of point out that especially in the sort of sales of the magazines, when we've looked at the sales chart, that the budget games, are ruling what's being bought. Because, I imagine by this point, a lot of C64s have been passed down to younger brothers, younger siblings. Yeah, maybe. While the older ones have probably gone on to the Amiga and stuff, like what happens with any kind of, so they're like probably, spending £3 down Boots or W.H. Smith's or wherever it was, or wherever it is you got your budget games from. And that was informing a lot of the purchases. But as we saw, most of those games and most of the ones that are riding high in those charts are still, there's just the re-releases. It's the re-releases of 1986, 87, 88 software. Yeah. And I'd also have expected to see improvements on certain genres and, not steps back. There's certain genres you're thinking, they got it so right, and why keep making worse versions of it? Like, why has nobody still done a better golf game? Yeah, just things like that, and there are certain people that have stood up and impressed me, and some engines that have impressed me in the way that they've got some really good stuff out of the C64 at this point. It's just that was the exception, rather than the norm, and I think that's my overriding remembrance. when I was looking through this, right, 143 games, the least amount of games we've had a look at. I think we had more in 1985, which was only from May to Christmas. There was a lot of the games I couldn't remember. I was like, what is that? I had to go look and remind myself because they were so unmemorable. Just some of them, it's like, what was that? Oh, that was that. Oh, what was that? I don't.
Yeah,
and I don't think. And nothing. There was only a handful of games that stuck, and I don't think I've had that in previous years. In previous years, it's been like, that one. There's been loads of stuff, and that's been across the board in most categories, I think. Yeah.
No, I agree. I mean, I suppose another thing that we have to think about is we got very few deports prior to 1990, maybe a few in 1989, but this year when we didn't list them. But a lot of these were deports or, also ran versions of the Amiga or the Atari ST or the 16-bit variation. And so we were getting kind of an 8-bit, throw them a bone.
Yeah.
Give. And so there's quite a lot of that going on where you've got, degraded visuals. Oftentimes the audio can be okay, but degraded game performance because they're trying to cram 16-bit games and 16-bit controls, with the mouse and things into the C64 and it doesn't work. And in many instances, there's a very few where that actually does work out quite well. There's not many Defender of the Crowns that do emerge out of that particular
true
pit. So we've had a little bit more of that, I think, in 1990, which plays into this scoring, I think, as well.
Yeah, very true. And I think on that note, that's it's not a particularly optimistic note, but it is what it is. We just say it as we see it. Should we move into our first award?
Yes.
Okay, so let's move to our first award of this episode. And that first award, as ever, same as last year, same as it ever was. This is the award for Best Visuals. Best graphics, best visuals, whatever you want to call it. And so what we've done is, prior to the episode, as we've done it normally over the last few years, we both listed out our favourites. We put them together, and we had a total of 9 games that were nominated. But if we both voted for them, then those are the ones that move through to the final choice. And so. I'll read out. I'll read out the ones that didn't make it for whatever reason. Only one of us voted for. So the ones that didn't make it, but got an honorary mention because I still think they're good. They're good, and I would say yes. There was Turrican, International 3D Tennis, Tilt, Retrograde, and TV Sports Football, which I think are all visually interesting and visually doing some good stuff.
Yeah, and also quite visually diverse, actually, which is quite nice.
Yeah, and doing some nice little techniques and stuff like that. But there were 4 games that made it through that we both voted for in the Best Visuals category. And those 4 games were Creatures, Deliverance, Stormlord 2, Flimbo's Quest, and Time Machine. So out of those 4, we must pick a best one and 2 runners-up.
Okay.
So where do we start? Is it an obvious one or not? I don't know.
Well, I suppose you could either start by taking out the one that's not as good.
Okay.
Or maybe arguing the case for one to stay in. But it's difficult with those 4, isn't it? Because there's pretty great graphics in all 4 of those.
All 4 of those are good for very different reasons.
They are.
I think.
Flimbo's Quest's got that really nice parallax scroller and its backgrounds are gorgeous looking. It's a lovely looking game, even if it does have
great sprite animation.
It has a penis head UI.
Penis head UI, which always a winner in my book.
Of course, Stormlord 2 has got the Follow Madonna with the big boobies and all the rest of that in it.
Yes.
But out of those 4, now I'm just gonna position this for you, and then you tell me if you think I'm crazy.
Okay.
So I'm going to say, as much as I voted for it, I would say Deliverance, Stormlord 2, I would remove.
Upon what criteria? Why would you kick that one out?
Because I don't think it's as good graphics as the other 3. And they look nice, but they're also based on the graphics from the previous game. They've just upped the shading of boobage. And
I actually not sure that they're actually as good as they were in Stormlord.
No. So, I put it in there because it is good graphics for a C64 game. It looks amazing, but... the question you always have to ask is it better than the others? And I think that's a particularly challenging field. Time Machine's got amazing backgrounds and really nice animations on that main character. And, even if it's Doc Brown, Flimbo's Quest's got those beautiful parallax scrolling backgrounds, and Creatures has got a whole bunch of graphics in it with numerous different things.
Yeah.
I think it's outgunned in that particular field.
I think you're right, and I think because I don't think it's as good as its predecessor, I think it would drop down into the bottom. I'm quite happy with Creatures, Flimbo's Quest, and Time Machine to be the top three.
Yeah.
Not sure which is top, but
well, then because this is where it gets very challenging, isn't it? So we eradicate the one. So now we've got three candidates, and so then you have to look at it and think, okay, which one? Because you've got two games all three games of those are in medium res. Time Machine's got those really nice sort of deep backgrounds. The two of those are side-scrolling kind of platform games, which is Creatures and Flimbo's Quest. Time Machine is not.
Yeah.
Time Machine has more depth and has more backgrounds because of the way that the game works. But Time Machine is also the same kind of background setup of about 6 or 7 screens, repeated with different kind of seasons. Which is a clever
the way that it does it sort of thing. Clever that it's like the evolution of that one screen over 5 time periods. I think is a clever conceit that is delivered. That could have been awful. That could have been rubbish, but they've done it really well. So
they have, but that's a technical technique. But that doesn't necessarily mean if it had 5 completely different levels and different graphics to go with those, I would say yeah, maybe. But it's you've taken one thing and just kind of altered the scene. Now again, that's the nature of the game. But you've also got the sprite animations in there. But you've got more animations in Flimbo's Quest and you've got more animations in Creatures. So I don't know. I'm thinking that as much as I think all 3 of those games are very worthy in that category, I'm not sure I would put Time Machine at the top. I think out of those 3, I think it's great, but it is kind of limited. The others have got much bigger levels, much more graphics in them, and far more sprite animations. Certainly in the case of Creatures, there's a whole bunch more.
Yeah.
So, and I know volume isn't everything, but in a C64 game, Time Machine is quite unique as well. So Creatures is leaning on.
And don't forget Mario. As well that Time Machine is a single load.
Yes, there is that as well. So, yeah, you've got to factor that in. But I still think the graphics on it are really good. The animations are nice, but there's not as much in them graphically as the others. Flimbo's Quest, certainly. Although Flimbo's Quest is a lot like Hawkeye in that respect. In that
Flimbo's Quest is a better Hawkeye, yes.
Yeah, and that's no slouch with its graphics.
I think Time Machine maybe does suffer then because it is all crammed into 64K, so it doesn't have the sort of the breadth of the other games because they're multi-loads, and so they can have different sets for each level. There's 7 levels, 7 very different levels in Flimbo's Quest.
Yes,
I would say that Creatures does it have the variety that Flimbo's Quest has?
It does have some variety in there because you've got, there's, I think was it so many levels broken into so many stages, wasn't it?
I think 3 levels broken into 2 and then there's the torture rooms, isn't there?
Yeah, you've got the torture sequences, which are nice. You've got the waterfalls and some of the sort of, those kind of things, those Mario-esque vibes.
Yeah.
But Flimbo's Quest was it wasn't exactly the same type of idea, but it was a side-scrolling jump and seek and do what you do.
Yeah. They both have weird shops.
They do have weird shops. Yeah. I don't know. Creatures might get the edge for me because of those animated sequences of the torture chambers, because they are very good. They are, and it is different. So it is, as well as the other things, it has that, and it has the map sequences in between, and it has the interstitials, and it has thousands of different animation sequences for the sprites.
And it's got a cool bit where you're on the water as well, and you use your little hand fan to propel yourself across. So little things like that.
I think Flimbo's Quest is very good. That parallax scrolling on it still blows me away because it's not often you see it done that well.
No.
But Creatures, actually more of the screen is scrolling in Creatures as well. So I think, for me, I'd perhaps go a Creatures, Flimbo's Quest, Time Machine in that order. But, what do you think?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think I can't argue Flimbo's Quest too hard because I think Creatures, I think this is where Creatures gets its due.
Yeah.
I think people said we were too hard on Creatures. Well, I don't think we were, but we were just as we saw it. But I think the one thing we did say that technically Creatures was astonishingly good and very clever, and its use of color as well is very good and very unusual.
Very clever.
And it looks at times like a NES game, which which I think is quite hard to pull off on the C64. And I think there's some very clever stuff going on in that. So. Yeah, I'm not going to argue too hard against Creatures getting the Best Visuals Award. I think it's a worthy winner there. And I think the other 2, Flimbo's Quest would be my runner-up. Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
There we go. So there you go. So Graham, would you like to announce the winner of the Best Visuals Award?
The winner of the Best Visuals Award for 1990 from the Zapped the Past podcast is Creatures. Yeah. Yay. Creatures. Was that a Thalamus game?
Yes. Yes, it was.
From Thalamus and the Rolands, I believe.
Yes. Stephen John Rowland. Yes.
Yeah, not Roland Browning.
No, not him. Or Rat.
Congratulations, Creatures.
Those visuals are very, very good, and
they really are good.
Yeah, they are, and they've come right at the end of the year once again.
Always the way, isn't it?
Always the way. Always the way. So there we go. That's the best visuals. Let's move on to our next award of this episode. And from the highs of the best visuals to the lows, this is the Crapcade Conversion Award. So this is the award for the worst arcade conversion on the machine. There were, how many did you say there was? 32?
Yeah, something like that, I believe. Yeah, there was 32, yeah.
32. And there were a particularly high number of terrible atrocities on the machine this year. I'm going to read out the two that we voted for that didn't make it. One of these I can't believe you haven't included, but maybe the two that I voted for, or Graham voted for, you voted for Escape from the Planet of the Robot Monsters, which was dreadful, but I don't think it's as bad as some of the others. And I voted for Time Scammer. Time
Scammer, yeah. I would have voted for it, but there was worse to vote for than that.
There is worse to vote for. So we've actually got six to choose from here, which goes to show something. I mean, that's 20% almost of the conversions which we said were crap. There is Operation Thunderbolt, P-47 Thunderbolt,
oh god,
Shadow Warriors, Chase HQ, Strider, and Hard Driving.
Okay.
Now, if it was me, I could give you I don't want to call it a top three, maybe a bottom three immediately out of those three.
Okay.
And for me, it would be Operation Thunderbolt, Chase HQ, and Hard Driving.
Yeah, I could sort of go with that. I think
P-47 Thunderbolt is dreadful.
Obscure.
But it's obscure, and they drew the mountains upside down. But it does actually function as a left to right scrolling shooter.
Yes, it does.
It's bad, but it's not. Shadow Warriors is crap, but it does function in a sense as a left to right walk along slash or whatever.
Yes.
And Strider, again, it's crap, but it does what it is. It's just a bad conversion. The others are affronts.
Yeah. No, I'd be inclined to agree, actually. P-47 Thunderbolt was shit, but it wasn't great to begin with, actually, and also the conversion was just ridiculous. But again, it does arguably function. Chase HQ, oh, goodness me.
No, Shadow Warriors. Chase HQ's Shadow Warriors.
Shadow Warriors. Shadow Warriors. There's no argument, really. I mean, I can put that in the sort of the dirty rung, if you like. They're also the nose bleeds, but not quite. Your nose hasn't broken.
Yeah.
And Strider. Okay, I know I hate Strider with a passion, but it does look and function like a crap Strider.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you'd say about Shadow Warriors and Operation Thunderbolt. Is that a P-47 Thunderbolt? Is that they're crap versions of what they are anyway, but they do function like crap versions. And the keyword there is function. The others, they do not function.
yeah, exactly. So are we okay then with Operation Thunderbolt, Chase HQ, and Hard Driving as our bottom three?
Yeah, absolutely. And primarily because no matter what happens, Hard Driving has to be in there. A game that was 2 weeks in development and was only released on a compilation because they had to.
Well, that's not the only one that was 2 weeks in development.
And that's all of them.
Yeah.
But it's just, it is, out of those aren't three great things, are the Chase HQ, utterly crap. Operation Thunderbolt, I suppose out of the three at the bottom, Operation Thunderbolt was the most, even that was a game that was a short stop in development, wasn't it? But I suppose it was crap. There's no way.
It was crap.
You can't sugarcoat that. I'm trying to think of any redeeming features of Operation Thunderbolt. I'm not sure there are any.
The thing with Operation Thunderbolt, the thing you have to take, do we take into consideration the Zzap review? It's one of the sizzlers. It got a sizzler. And it's a 12-day conversion that they never saw, that they never looked at, they didn't see. It got shoehorned out. The fact that it's even running is amazing. But then that's the same with Hard Driving. These two games that at least they had the good grace to just shove hard driving out on a compilation.
Yeah. Yes, they did. Yeah.
Which, I mean, you could then go, they knew it was shit, but so they put it on a cassette with power drift. So at least you get something good for your money. Operation Thunderbolt. Ugh.
And I actually hate hard driving, but I'll say this. It should never have been attempted.
No.
And in actuality wasn't really, because the hard driving it was kind of, somebody had a go. It wasn't, they deemed it probably wasn't possible. It was an Amiga game, and even that wasn't particularly great. So somebody somewhere had said, this is not going to work. If you've seen Driller, it's hardly, top speed racing. And yes, if you're a Jeff Crammond, you can do a stunt car racer, but even that had limitations.
And so
took 3
hard
years.
Driving
Exactly. Hard driving was doomed. It isn't, it's 2 weeks worth of arcade conversion. It's barely finished. So I don't think it can be at the top. I think it's in the 3, but I wouldn't put it as the worst one out of those. But that's a hard fought race between Operation Thundercrap and Crap HQ.
Yeah. Chase HQ is quite frankly one of the worst things I've ever experienced. For a full price,
dreadful.
For a thing that I remember when I first loaded it up and then it started, I couldn't quite understand what I was looking at. I was like, I was struck dumb by the crapness, the awful ineptitude of the shit that was on display. It was like, what is the hell?
God.
It's we've seen. I mean, with loads of times we've seen, Spectrum Z80 code just shoved onto the C64 with no sort of thought or concept of what this machine's not built for that.
No.
And the thing is, with Chase HQ, is that in the same year we saw how it should have been because we got the sequel.
Yeah, true.
So within 12 months, we've had Chase HQ and we've had SCI, Chase HQ2, Special Crime Investigations. And we had, at the same time as we had Chase HQ, we had Turbo Outrun, we'd had Power Drift. There was no...
Yeah.
The C64 is quite capable of doing these things and doing them okay.
Yeah.
We saw that at the end of the year.
84.
Yeah, we've seen Pit Stop 2 and stuff like that. Great American Cross Country Road Race. There's been a number of, like I said, Power Drift, Stunt Car Racer. Chase HQ is, without doubt, so shoddy. But it's because the others, I would take into consideration the fact that they're 12-day productions. Yeah. Chase HQ isn't, as far as I'm aware.
No.
That's a full dev cycle. And that's what you ended up with. I mean, maybe it's not. I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of Chase HQ. But I just get the fact that they just looked at the Spectrum version. That'll do. Just put it on the 64. We can't do that. We can, and you will. And when we'll sell it for full price.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, it had the horrible Spectrum-y black and green.
Oh, it was awful.
Graphics. I'll give Operation Thunderbolt this. It might have been done in a short space of time, but they did actually create a lot of graphics for it, albeit they weren't very good. But they did. You had them. They had an attempt, and it does have all of the game, including the crazy level on the endless airplane and things like that.
Yeah.
But they did try and get, at least do that. Chase HQ was an abomination and awful. It's uncontrollable. So I'd be happy with a Chase HQ Operation Thunderbolt hard driving in that order. If that's where you're at.
That's definitely where I'm at.
Yeah, no. I mean, there's no argument. I hate hard driving, but there's no forgiving Chase HQ. And it got 53%, I think, did it, in Zzap?
Something stupid like that, yeah.
It's utterly crap. I mean, goodness, even I was going to say Pit Stop, which is obviously better than that, but even Pole Position.
Yeah, the original Pole Position. Yeah.
Than Chase HQ. And they had teams of programmers and, we'd
had tunnels and stuff since, what was that first one? Electroglide. Yeah. That was ages. It was years ago. So it's just crap. And, you look at things like Buggy Boy and things like that, which we weren't massive fans of, but Jesus Christ, Chase HQ is awful.
And, of course, it was Tiki Software, wasn't it? Our favourites, Tiki Software. They were responsible for some of the crap ones last year as well.
Yeah, they were. Always a sure sign.
Who can forget the loading screen on Chase HQ as well? It was that bad version of the cassette.
It's the Muppets. They're like
really
the
weird hands. Really weird hands.
They're like, ooh.
Yeah, it ain't good. It ain't good. It really ain't. No. A worthy triple. That, I mean, goodness me, don't go and play them. And that's a collective's crazily. That's a collective's quite a high score actually for 3 games. But thankfully, hard driving brings the score average right down.
Yeah. God, I mean, I'd give it to hard driving, but it's like you said, it's 12 days. So you have to sort of consider, and also I'm taking into consideration it never got a full price release. It was on thingies until it was
have
budget.
To do that. No, I think you have to do that. And remember that the person that started that game didn't create that.
And
they had said, they couldn't do it. And the person that was given the shit end of the stick to get that done in 2 weeks, they did what they could in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
and the person who started been left in the bin.
And the person who started Operation Thunderbolt never finished it either.
Yeah, exactly. So you know what? And this is no disrespect to the people that picked up the mantle after somebody had said they couldn't do it or whatever happened in that instance. Hats off to you for just getting on with the job and saying, you know what, we've got to release something, and just because people have bills to pay and things like that. So hats off. No discredit to you for stepping in when the chips were down. But the reality is that Domark, I think it was it with hard driving or whomever it was, they should never have put that on a compilation. Talk about getting to the worst bit of the compilation. That's the equivalent of Christmas time. You've eaten all the Quality Street. All you've got left is the ones that nobody wants at the end.
The strawberry fudge or whatever it is.
Yeah, the strawberry creams and
no one wants that.
Toffee pennies or whatever they call them now. So.
Oh, I love toffee pennies. I'd eat them.
There's always one. There's always one.
I like toffee and the toffee fingers as well. Anything in a gold wrapper.
They're all right. Yeah, they're all right. But the golden pennies, they're always the ones that are left, is what I'm saying.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. But anyway, there we go. So Graham, would you like to announce the winner of our Crapcade conversion for 1990?
The winner of the Crapcade Conversion for 1990 from the Zapped and Pass Podcast Golden Breadbin Awards is Chase HQ. Stinks.
It really does.
Awful.
Oh, it's such a bad game. Such a terrible thing. Awful thing. Oh, there we go. All right. With that one out of the way, well, it still stays crap. Let's go on to our next set of awards. Well, after the Crapcade conversion, we stay low. And let's just, because I like to finish on a high. I like to get the, start high, then go low. This is the award for, we used to call it the Sunday Best, but obviously no one understood what we're on about. So it's the worst game. This is the award for the worst game of the year. Now, one of the things we tend to do here sort of thing is we leave the arcade games for the Crapcade conversion. These generally tend to be more original games or not, but but there are, so there's a different sort of setting here. So, and there were a lot. There were a lot of games here.
There are a lot.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. This is the most. This is
there could have been a lot more.
The highest amount for any single award of the year. Once again, we did our bit. We listed all the games that we hated, that we thought were dreadful, and then we see what we paired up. The ones that either Graham or I voted for, but not both of us, were Daley Thompson's Super Test.
Yeah.
Chase HQ was in there again. Weird Dreams, Monty Python's Flying Circus, Italy 1990, Dragon Spirit, and Killing Machine.
Oh dear.
They were all in there. But they were all outdone by the following 7 titles that we both voted for. And those titles were Prison Riot, World Cup Italia 90, Wild Streets, Time Scanner, The Footballer, Hard Driving, and Striker.
Okay.
That's a big bag of shite.
It is. Now, are we taking the arcade ones out of that list, or are we including them?
Well, I think we take Hard Driving out. Hard Driving's had its kick in.
Mm-hmm.
So we can move Hard Driving down, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we'll take that out there.
Do you want to leave Time Scanner in as a... Because it is dreadful.
It is a crap game. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, I mean, leave it in there for now because obviously there's a whole bunch of games around that, and so we've got to filter it properly. As it
there
were.
Is.
There's like 3 football games in that list.
There are, and one I'll go to town on. Now, so a couple of these maybe not the worst games, but I think are in here for other reasons, and I'm going to say those probably 2 are Prison Riot and World Cup Italia 90. So I think Prison Riot is in there the worst game because it's one of the most distasteful.
It is one of the. It does have a bad taste. I don't know that makes it the worst game. It's
I think as a game, it's a Spectrum conversion. It looks like a Specky game, but it's Joe Blade 3 in all but name. Yeah. I know there was one, so I'm not quite sure that deserves to be in there because
I'd take it out of there.
I think we needed to bring it up and go, don't do this. There was a big prison riot and now you've made a game of it. So, we'll take that one out, I think, because the other one I'd say is World Cup Italia 90, which if that game had just been released as a football game, as a football conversion, which it was originally released as in 1989, it would have been fine. And we'd have just gone, it's an arcade football game. But the fact that they slapped the official World Cup Italia 90 license on it, on a game that only features 4 international teams and no cup, because it was just an arcade conversion, and then changed the logo at the front. That's why I put it in, because I think it needed a mention. But it's not the worst football game I've ever seen. So as a game, it's not the worst game. It's just maybe should be in the worst licenses. I don't know, but
maybe take it out of there then, because it's it wasn't great, but in that field, it's not in good company anyway, really.
It's not, but I think it's in there for different reasons to what these 4 are.
Yeah. Now, Wild Street was utterly shit.
Oh, Wild Streets is staying.
That's the one with was it a cat?
It's the panther. It's the pointless panther.
The pointless panther. And when the fighting moves were stick leg out, don't stick leg out.
or don't, just jump. Jump.
Just jump.
What is it? Yeah, Wild Streets is staying. We'll come to that.
With really bad graphics,
Time Scanner was dreadful.
It wasn't good, was it?
It was not good in any way, shape, or form. It missed the entire point of the actual arcade game, which was supposed to be the sort of flicking between different time periods, but locked them off into some stupid multi-load. Oh, God. So bad. And the footballer and striker. So... I mean, I'll take the football out because football is just a football manager game.
Yeah, there was things wrong with it though, right?
There was many things wrong with it.
It didn't involve a football.
It was written in BASIC. It didn't include a footballer, no. But you got those weird messages, didn't you? Oh no, you got the weird messages in Striker, didn't you? I like the cut of your jib. You're staying in.
Yeah. The thing is, you could play that game 16 different ways. You get the same results every time. I noticed.
Yes. It was shit.
Yeah,
but I think Strikers are on a different level of. I don't know if I can actually keep because this category is worst game. I don't know if Striker actually qualifies as a game.
Well, it was released as an attempt.
It was released as a game, but I don't think standing there watching a goalkeeper naked from the waist down fall over in the mud counts as a game.
It was the spot that got me on the spot, the penalty spot, where it's drawn at the wrong perspective compared to everything else. So something I remember distinctly was the terrible perspective, and that you had to kick the ball at an angle, but the angleometer was shown in 2D, but you're in 3D, so it made very little sense for it to be that way. It was utterly stupid.
Utterly ridiculous.
Utterly stupid, bad.
So if I was going to take one out of them, probably I would take Time Scanner out.
Yeah, I think I'd go with that because for the sake of simplicity. Time Scanner was awful, but it's not in Wild Streets territory.
No, it's
certainly not in Striker territory. I mean, the footballer is very basic, but in the sea of football games that we've had, and since we've had some really good football games, these aren't great.
No, they're not. The footballer was just a football management one. It was just like boring, and it was written.
Lots of text.
There was the one with the football pitch, wasn't it? And did you get the text at the top, and you get the numbers about the football pitch, and it would just go, they would flash. But it was written in BASIC.
It's all BASIC,
10,000 lines, was it?
Which is, I mean, that's dedication. I think that actually probably puts that game in third place because it's the worst game, but 10,000 lines of BASIC, that's no small task. That's probably a type-in from a magazine in 1983. I was
going to say, he started that in 83 and finished it in 89.
Yeah, he had a beard by the time he finished typing that BASIC in.
Lord. And then he got to check some data error in.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no!
And then his power pack went off just as he put his return on the last REM or whatever it would be. The last let this be that.
Oh.
I mean, goodness me! Nobody has shown that much commitment to Commodore Basic because it's not even a very good version of Basic either. So I think it is one of the worst games we've played. I don't know that actually probably you could argue the position, but I don't think it's definitely not the worst. So
no. And so, I mean, my gut feeling is that Wild Streets is the worst thing we played this year.
It's so utterly rubbish. It makes me laugh thinking about Wild Streets because of the stupid image of that panther just in the middle of the UI.
Just walking off. It just walks off. Where are you going? He's supposed to fight.
The guys ran in and just ran off. It was like there was no real fighting involved, was there?
He just jumped through the 5 levels. Every now and again you'd shoot. Jump until you got to the guy. And then you had to wait for him to walk back and he was dead slow. Oh, God, it was so bad.
And the fighting moves that you had, such as they were, you couldn't do anything with them. They were literally useless. There was no real fighting. You were just raising your leg and probably just farting at people, I think.
And it probably there was that title screen, wasn't there, with the close up of the side of the panther and the blurry shit in the background, and the way the Wild Streets came on. There's a W and then it came on Isled Streets. To fit in with really a W.
Bad. Do you remember the park level with the really bad tree graphics? Honestly, it's not good. It's not good. Blocky, weird representations where the flying kick was just an ordinary kick where they just took off. So they just kind of took off on the different. It wasn't good, and the backgrounds were horribly repetitive and lots ugly. Of bad bricks and ugly. It always made me laugh that they went to the attention to detail of putting window shutters on the windows, but not on the main windows. They're just blue. There's no detail on them. They're just giant blue.
And there's in the UI at the bottom, there's just a panther's face in the middle for no reason. It doesn't do anything.
It doesn't do anything.
I think that's the thing that annoys me the most. If you promise me a game where you've got a panther, like we said, like Shadow Dancer, where you've got the dog, you expect the panther to do something. You just expect it. Oh, cool! It's me and a panther in the Wild Streets, and the panther just walks off. I mean, it's a cat. That's what they do. I get it, but you don't. No, this is awful.
Yeah, and to finish the game, just jump. Just jump. You can just jump through the whole game. You don't even need to fight or do anything. You can just jump until you get to the end.
And then when he's walking back, just go to the next screen, flick back, and the enemies will disappear. Flick back until he's walked up to you, and then jump. It's just dreadful. Dreadful on every level. This game, it was so bad.
It wasn't good.
No, and there's no names against it, was it? It was made by Titus.
The Titus. Yeah, the people that made it. 34% it earned as well. So
that's way too high, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that obviously it's a far cry from Striker's magnificent 5%. But I think Wild Streets is bad because they've attempted to try and do something that was actually quite playable.
Yeah.
Didn't put any playability in it. They had something in it that served no purpose. It could have been anything. Why put a panther in it? It didn't need to be. It just wanders around, does nothing.
And it's flick screen on a machine with a register for a scrolling. Yeah. When we've looked at stuff like Creatures and Flimbo's Quest and stuff, and Retrograde that we've seen this year, and these great scrolling video games, and then they get this flick screen horror.
Oh, don't.
With stickle brick sprites.
It made the sprites in Kung Fu Master look blocky.
Yeah.
That takes some doing. But at least that had the playability factor now. Wild Streets, definitely.
And the way they walked as well was too fast. The animation was too fast. When it's 2 frames, like...
No, not good. Not good.
So, for me, Wild Streets is the worst game I played this year. I mean, it's worse than Chase HQ. And that was crap.
It is utterly crap, yeah. I mean, no argument from me. I mean, it's in good company with some of that rubbish in there. But yeah, I think of things like Dragon Spirit and some of those where you've that crappy top-down shooter, or some of the other crap that we've had to play. Weird Dreams, when you're trapped in the giant thing.
I wanted Weird Dreams.
Candy Floss machine.
Weird Dreams was awful, but
it was awful.
Those cult games were just weird. That's the thing with those. They're just weird. I don't even know if they're real things. I don't understand them. And the fact they actually got reviewed somehow in Zzap, I think, was a big mistake. But Wild Streets was a full price horror. It came out. It was $9.99. Imagine paying £15 on disc for that.
I don't think I want to.
I can't. No. I can't even think of it. I can't even. Oh my Lord, it's so bad. There we go, Graham. Please tell us. These are quicker than I thought they were going to be. But please tell us the winner for the worst game of 1990.
The worst game for 1990, as voted for by the Zapped the Past podcast on their Breadbin Awards, is Wild Streets. Yeah, meow.
Rubbish.
Me, ouch.
Guff.
Utter blocky shit.
Just, oh man, I couldn't imagine playing that at the time. I'm so glad I didn't. I was shocked when I loaded that up.
It's the equivalent of shitting out a Duplo brick. Nobody wants that. Nobody.
Stickle brick.
Nobody. Stickle brick to the eyeball for that one. Awful.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, away with your wild streets and never darken our door again. Let's just move
wild
on.
Streets.
Indeed. Let's move on to the next one. Good Lord. Well, it's a bit nicer. The next one, it's a bit nicer. This is the award for the best audio.
Oh, okay.
Best audio. This will take about 5 seconds. Best audio. So once again, we listed our nominations for the award. I'll say the ones that either I voted for or Graham voted for. The ones that didn't get a double award, they were Deliverance, Stormlord 2, Matt Gray's
music, yeah.
That was very good. Flimbo's Quest.
That's Johan Bierhard and
Rain?
It's Rain, but it's not pronounced Rain, is it? I think it's
I don't know, but
Rayan Overhand, I think.
Yeah, Retrograde, which is Steve Rowland.
Mr. Rowland, yes.
Really good. And Turrican.
I think that's Chris Hulsbeck.
Chris Hulsbeck
and the guy that he worked with.
Yeah. So those are the ones that, those are some stonking bits of music.
They are good.
They are all very, very good. But they didn't make the cut because we've got 3. We already got 3 that we agreed on. And those 3 are Ghouls and Ghosts. Golden Axe. And Midnight Resistance.
So, firstly, Golden Axe is really great music, a great version of the arcade.
It's a brilliant version of that arcade.
It genuinely is. He excelled himself at that point. It is genuinely brilliant. One of the best versions of it as well. Really good. But it's that opening music. It really is really very good. Midnight Resistance, of course. Midnight Resistance. That had music that went really well with the game.
Yes. Absolutely.
And it would, it's a straight in. This was we only really recently looked at this one, but it was straight in there. Really good. I'm trying to think who it was by. Who was Midnight Resistance by?
It's Keith Tinman.
Keith Tinman, that's right. Yeah. Thank you, Tinman. Thank you, Mr. Caldy Lion. Sorry about that, Mr. Tinman. No, it was Tin Men, wasn't it? There was
Tin Men,
Tin Men. But either way, so Midnight Resistance had a really good series of tunes that went in the game. They're arcade versions. Again, they're versions of the arcade, but they were good versions of the arcade. And it drove that game along. Then you get to Ghouls and Ghosts.
Yeah.
And what can you really say about that? I can't say anything other than the only music that would have challenged that potentially for how good it is Gordian's Tomb, but Gordian's Tomb wasn't in Zzap. So Ghouls and Ghosts, I think, for me, hands down, because it's one of the greatest SIDs ever created.
Yeah.
And it's not just a technical showcase of sound effects, really, from the SID, which I still, to this day, I'm not exactly sure how you even begin to do that.
No.
But it's such a great piece of music that fits so completely brilliantly with that game that it defies belief. It's astonishing. I mean, people love it or hate it. Some people, maybe there's people out there that don't rate it. I don't know. For me, Ghouls and Ghosts is the hands down winner in that category because it's amazing. But that's not to take anything away from Golden Axe and Midnight Resistance. And I'd probably put them in that order, actually. Ghouls and Ghosts, amazing. Golden Axe, brilliant version of the arcade music and really drives that opening of the game along, considering the game was so yellow and pretty disappointing with its single enemies. Midnight Resistance, the music isn't as good as Golden Axe. The game was better than Golden Axe.
The game
music
far
wasn't
better.
as good. Yeah,
the
music it was good. Don't get me wrong, it was very good, but it didn't capture the grunt and the sort of the Conan the Barbarian-esque quality of the Golden Axe music, which it needs. You've got to have that kind of, that amazing dun 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 dun. You've got to have that at the beginning to really capture that, and it did do a really great version of that. But that neither of those two, they're in Ghouls and Ghosts is in a different league to the others.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it would be a Ghouls and Ghosts, Golden Axe, Midnight Resistance, and they're all very worthy. But my gosh, Ghouls and Ghosts. I mean, that was right at the beginning of the year, wasn't it?
Very, very first game we reviewed of the year.
It's absolutely astonishing. I mean, we knew that would happen, though.
We did. I think we alluded to it back in the review back then when we looked at it. And I remember, just to go back, I remember coming around to your house which would have been 1990, obviously, and you going, listen to this.
Yeah.
I remember you saying it. Listen to this. I was like, oh, listen to this. And he played me. I was like, crap, that's really good. And I thought it was on the Amiga. That's a SID tune. I was like, that can't be on the C64. And then you said it's the theme tune from Ghouls and Ghosts. I was like, good Lord, that's pretty impressive.
It's astonishing. I still, like I said, I don't understand I've tried, I compose music I try to compose music and I have done I've never done a lot of SID stuff, I'll be honest. And I had the pleasure of having to do a piece of music for a game that you created, which was kind of a Halloween type game.
You did?
And I leaned into the Ghouls and Ghosts idea, I have to say, because that was kind of the remit of what we wanted. We wanted something with a hint of Ghouls and Ghosts, but with a bit of this and a bit of that. And I leaned into that. And I can tell you, it's not easy to do what he did with real sounds.
With a real harpsichord sample.
Yeah. And I had a keyboard, piano, MIDI keyboard, and all the setup and everything else. And I was able to capture what I think is the essence of something that would be. It felt like a Halloween vibe. But my gosh, I was leaning in on Tim Follin's masterpiece there, thinking, how did he do that? He used harpsichords. I'm going to use harpsichord. He used big organ sounds and bells. I'm going to use chiming organ sounds and bells and wind sounds and things. Because if you're going to do a Halloween game or a game that's set in a spooky place, accept no substitutes. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
It's just, there's no other way. And I did that and I was very happy with the result. And I've seen an interview with Tim Follin about Ghouls and Ghosts, which he, by the way, says is one of his greatest pieces of music he did on that system. And he only did it on the C64. So that version is the only version of that tune that exists on that computer. All the other versions of that game, even though he did the music for them, he didn't do that piece of music for them. He did something slightly different. So it just shows you.
Didn't he do the same for Leadstorm as well? It was only the C64 had a bespoke piece as well, didn't it?
It did, yeah. It had that kind of weird sort of Smoke on the Water variation a little bit there, first few bars. But he uses sounds and techniques and things that I'm not 100% sure. You'd need someone like Mike Clark to come and explain how he did it. And then once our heads had exploded, and he would be the right person to ask exactly how that was created because he would know. But I have to say, it's astonishing. And to this day, it's probably one of, if not the top SID I think I've ever heard. And like I say, the only thing that challenges that, and it wouldn't really, but Gordian's Tomb is another one. It's not in this category because it didn't come out in Zzap, but that's a 31-minute piece of music, which is also quite interesting, but for different reasons. But no, I think there's the three worthy games, three worthy bits of music, but it was never really going to be anyone else's year, was it?
And the crime there is that it only got 98% for sound.
It's shocking. There's not been many 99% for sound. I think Hubbard's got maybe one or two.
Yeah.
I think Knucklebusters was 99%. I think Monty on the Run was 99%.
Monty on the Run was, and not sure Knucklebusters was another one he did just after Monty on the Run.
Not many of them about, is there?
No, there are not. But yeah, I'm not going to argue. I mean, yeah. We've said this before, Ghouls and Ghosts was going to win this category, hands down, this year. Yeah. It was just about what was going to come second. And I thought, I'll stand up for Retrograde. I think Retrograde's got a great soundtrack, some really, really nice pieces of music in that that fit really well. But Midnight Resistance, I think Midnight Resistance fits is better because it's in game, and it drives that game along. I was like properly into that game because of that music. It's great stuff. And Golden Axe is just, I love the Golden Axe theme, even from the arcade. When you get a really good C64 version of it in the hands of Who and Tell, like we saw with Turbo Outrun.
Yes,
it just does. It just comes up with the goods in these big tunes and makes them C64s them into a way that is like, that's really good.
Absolutely. And I don't think he might have just been into his 20s. I think maybe he was younger than that. I don't think he was in, because Rob Hubbard is obviously a lot older than all the other C64 musicians. So, he's a fully qualified musician, and he does other stuff. But, Haroon Tell's producing a sheer volume of music that's coming out of the guy, and he can still just turn in the goods. And he was only young when he did that. Same with Tim Follin. He wasn't experienced. And remember, Tim Follin didn't write that music player. He just instructed the guy of what he wanted and then made the music, literally coded that in. It blows my mind. All of them who do that really blows my mind.
There we go. So, Graham, the obvious winner here. Would you like to announce the winner for the category of Best Audio for 1990?
The winner of the Ghouls and Ghosts Award for being Ghouls and Ghosts 1990 is... No, I'm joking.
Golden Axe.
Golden Axe. The winner of Best Audio for 1990, as voted for by the Zzap Class podcast, Golden Breadbins, is, of course, Ghouls and Ghosts.
Awesome tune.
I'll put some clips into the audio just so you can hear it.
Yeah, very good, very good.
Yep.
There we go. Let's move on to our next award. And that one, this is where it gets a bit off the wall. This, of course, is the craziest concept.
Oh, dear.
Again, so this is how much were they smoking is the other name for this award, I think.
Absolutely.
So again, once again, we had our votes. These are the games that only got voted for by one of us, not both of us. There was Horus. How much did you ever want to know about Egypt, but were afraid to ask?
It's a bodybuilding hawk players, I believe.
yeah, it was. Kamikaze.
It's bad taste.
Bad taste. Boing.
Yeah, the game where you couldn't boing so well.
That should have been in Crap Game. I forgot about that one. That's what I mean. Blue Angel 69.
Oh, that's the
Robo Boobs.
Robo Boobs.
Why?
Why was I programmed to
feel horny?
Why?
Monty Python's Flying Circus.
Just
point and click.
yeah. Wrong game.
And finally, Omniplay Horse Racing. No horse racing.
No horses in it.
Betting. It's a betting sim.
It's a betting game.
And it's crap. And it's options to the max. Just rubbish.
Yep.
But they didn't make the cut. The 4 games that did, that we both voted for, there's Heat Seeker, Weird Dreams, Sabutio, and Wicked.
Oh, God. Do you know, I'd actually forgotten about Wicked. And then when I did I looked back over and I was like, oh my God, that was the really wild one.
Yeah.
It's really, really weird. Like with rules that made very little sense.
No, very little sense. Like you were a son and you were poking stuff and there was things just growing everywhere and you had to shoot. Like, what the hell is this?
I mean, look at that field of games. Heat Seeker is the ball and the leg.
Ball in the leg, where you must heat up the Tricephalus of Nem or whatever it was.
That's it. Yeah, that's right. So Weird Dreams was the one where you're trapped in the candy floss machine at the beginning.
Yes. Yeah.
Just weird.
Yeah.
Sabutio. I mean, as a concept, Sabutio that's just a crap version of Sabutio. It should never have been.
No.
So I don't think it's a crazy concept. A football game isn't a crazy concept. That's a football game done stupidly. It should never have been one.
It's a crazy concept to think that you could translate Sabutio to a digital format, maybe.
But it's nowhere. It's not in the same crazy league as the other 3. Nowhere near.
No,
it's based on a tangible thing.
Yeah, I think up against the craziness of the other 3.
Yeah, and Sabutio makes sense. It doesn't make sense on the C64 to look like a pool game and all the rest of it. But the actual game of Sabutio is a game that's enjoyed by many, and it's not a crazy concept to have it. The C64 version is. But Heat Seeker, I mean, goodness me, there's some serious, I mean, I say that. You up the scale, you think Heat Seeker, that's a weird game. And then you think about Weird Dreams, you think, goodness me, was I really climbing out of a candy floss machine at one point in the game? Yes. And then you look at Wicked and you're like, what the hell was that even about?
Yeah.
Utterly mind-blowing, these games.
Yeah. These are the good. I mean, the good thing about these is these could only have come to fruition in the digital sphere. In video games. That's what video games are good at sometimes, is being a bit weird, a bit off the wall. But there's off the wall and a bit unusual. I mean, Mario's weird, but these are just, I don't know. It's like, so Weird Dreams is odd because it's a dream, so it's all, okay, so it's got to be dreams, but then it's also bad because it's not a particularly good game to play. And so it's this concept of, I would say Weird Dreams is maybe the weaker of those three because it is based on dreams, and dreams are in and of themselves odd. Yeah, no,
I would agree. And I think, remember, Wicked had that, you had to shoot the bubbles to turn them from one colour to another and then grow seeds because you had to plant the seeds near the blue portals. And what was reality, in reality, was meant to be a shoot 'em up, turned into some kind of things guiding other things. And it was just this sea of stuff appearing on the screen. It was a Homer's webpage of a game with
Yes.
graphics coming at you from all angles that made no sense. So I think you're right. I think if you're going to look at it that way, then I think Weird Dreams is wild.
But it's a dream. But it's dreams.
But it's a dream. And dream logic can mean that wild stuff can happen.
Yeah.
That isn't, dreams are the very definition of crazy concepts, really.
Yes.
So I would say, yeah, the Weird Dreams is probably drop that to the bottom of the three. And then it just leaves
Heat Seeker or Wicked.
See, now, I think out of the two, Wicked is a shoot 'em up made into a clumsy, weird series of crazy. Heat Seeker is a genuine crazy concept.
Yeah.
As a concept goes. I mean, the language of it aside, which, I mean, I quite like the language of that because I like it when, I like Dune for this, not the game Dune, but the film Dune for the same reason, where you've got Kwisatz Haderach and I like that kind of, so I like the fact that they've done that you're controlling a leg with a ball on it.
Which seems the most weird. Why would you make that? Why would any scientist go, we've got this thing to go in there. Oh, does it fly? No. Does it walk? Kind of. What do you mean kind of? Well, it's only one leg. What's it do? Oh, what's it, one leg attached to a body? No, it's attached to a basketball. Why? That's all we had lying around.
I just imagine there's a conversation with the producers of that game stood over the shoulder of the coder who's just smoking a regular cigarette, nothing fancy. And he's just sat there and he's clacking his keyboard. And they're like, so what is this? And they just go, it's a leg with a ball on it, isn't it? And it's like, so what does it do? Well, you got to get the heat off the ball and take it over there and plant it so you grow the seeds. All right. Keyboard carries on clacking. And they just went, yeah, okay. Because you can't, somebody had a very clear focus of the crazy concept of that and made it reality. I admire that. Wicked looked to me like a game that started as one thing and then went completely out of control because I'm pretty sure that's ramped up with the expedited mental capacity of the potential substances that were assisting the development of that game, allegedly. I don't know that for sure, but it looks to me like that started off as a shoot 'em up, and then by the end of the 6th day of smoking the heroic doses of weed, you ended up with Wicked, and they were like, because they'd forgotten what they'd done the previous day. What are we doing again? I don't know. Oh, God, there's a hand shooting at an eye.
What's that cloud? What's it doing? What's that? Why is the blue things appearing? I don't know. You said that on Tuesday. Oh, did I?
You said you needed to grow the orange baubles off the blue ones near the giant hand, but behind the egg. Oh, okay. Yeah, I did say that. Yeah. So I think
so that's what I've done.
I think a craziest concept for me is a start to finish. Someone had an idea of something and they made it real and they stuck to that concept. And Heatseeker is the clear winner there.
Yeah.
I think Wicked is a good second because Wicked is a concept that went crazy. And Weird Dreams, well, dreams are crazy. So I think Heatseeker because it's a crazy concept, then Wicked second because it's a concept that went crazy, and then Weird Dreams because it's a concept that is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good 1, 2, 3 and a good rationale, I think.
Yeah, I think Heatseeker is definitely the winner there because it is genuinely odd. And
it is.
It is genuinely weird, and just the way it all plays out, and the way it looks, and the way it feels, and you've got to detach the ball to go put it in flames to heat the ball up to take it to the plants. It's like what?
And the commitment to it, because the person who made that, designed the game, is committed to it. The graphics are all good. The animation's really good. The game engine that's behind it is all good. They were committed to that idea. They were. No one. If someone came in and went, "Does it have to be a leg?" He's like, "Yes." Because how else are you gonna populate the flowers? You know what? Just close the door. See you later, Dave. Bye.
Because the thing is, if you think about this, it's like, so your last game, Iraq, yeah, it was bit weird. That can you do something a bit more mainstream this time? No.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Just tell us what you're doing. Well, it's about this. It's a sort of seek 'em up sort of thing where you've got to heat these, things up, and you got that. All right, that sounds cool. Then it turns up. Why am I a leg with a ball on it? You said it was going to be not as weird. It's not.
And I'll tell you one thing. All credit to Thalamus for putting that out. Because there's a lot of companies out there would have looked at that and gone, we're not putting that out. Well, actually, in the 1990s, they probably would have if it had been even anywhere close to that. But I admire because they did they really supported the idea of the leg, and the advertising had the leg, and the image was really nice. And it was it was Ollie Frey that drew that as well.
It was.
So, you know what? No, I think a worthy winner of that is Heatseeker, and Wicked did go crazy. I mean, there's no doubt about that. It just, someone lost control.
Yes, yeah. It just, I think Wicked is, but also as well, Wicked was a deport as well, wasn't it, from the Amiga? So it came down from the Amiga. Yeah. So there was on the Amiga, it may have not seemed as crazy because you could make things out a bit more. On the C64, it's a blurry, crazy mass.
It's a mishmash of medium res and brown colours and things, and just too much. Yeah.
And you've no idea what was really going on. But I think Heatseeker, as you rightly point out, is a commitment to a vision of weird.
Yes, it's a genuine. And by the way, just to say, when we say crazy concept, we're not saying bad game.
No. Heatseeker was fine. It was all right.
No, so, I mean, some people might think, listening to this might think that there's a comparison there. No, when we say crazy concept, Heatseeker's a great game, but it is crazy. It's not as good, but it's still crazy. And Weird Dreams, all right, Weird Dreams wasn't very good at all, in my opinion. But they are commitments to crazy. I'll give them that. But Heatseeker is actually quite a good game underneath that as well, and pretty to look at. So there you go.
But it's just insane.
Yeah. I mean, it's different to Unique.
Yeah, and as you rightly said in the episode, what did you say in the episode? You went, "I've never been so glad that you got a game to do the review for."
Exactly. Yeah, right. I looked at that. I was like, where do you even begin with that?
Don't know.
There's not many like it.
I think that's the thing with these categories at the moment. Sort of thing. There's been some like Head and Shoulders that's flitting in there. I can't see anything getting close to it. But
that was always going to be the way of the way that the bell curve has worked for this year. Because, like I said, when we were looking at our review of the games, there's so much in the middle that just it's not memorable or anything else. One thing you can say about that is it's bloody memorable, and that's why a lot of these games are at the top of these particular charts. Is because they're the most memorable ones. In some instances, not for good reasons, but in this instance, for a good reason. Yeah.
A game where you were a buff, fox-headed thing in it, exploring a pyramid. Didn't even get a look in.
Not weird enough.
Not weird enough. No, not weird enough.
I admire you're crazy, but you're not committed enough to the crazy.
No, absolutely. Your robo boobs, it's just not crazy enough. They're just robo boobs.
But that was actually quite a good game apart from that thing.
It was a good game. It was a really good little puzzle game, or competitive game.
Just didn't need the robo boobage, did it?
Not really, no. Here we go. So, Graham, would you like to announce the winner for the craziest concept?
The winner of the Craziest Concept Award for 1990 from the Zapped to the Past podcast on their Breadbin Awards, no less, is Heatseeker.
Seek the heat. As a ball on top of a leg.
It's Mr. McClegg's game, isn't it? It's
really
got a leg for a ball and a ball for a leg.
Oh, good Lord, what a crazy thing. Oh, there we go. Let's move along. Bloody Heatseeker. Let's move along to our next category. What we got left, just 2 categories coming up. We have our Patreon awards and then a sort of roundup as well, see what's coming up next year. But let's get into our next category. Graham, this is the licensed catastrophe.
Great.
Yay. So this is we got a license. Let's make a game out of it. Okay. As ever, we put our normal, criteria to the game itself. And the 4 that we voted for individually, but didn't make the full cut, was Beverly Hills Cop, which was crap. I know. Ghostbusters 2.
Yee.
I might actually put you voted for Ghostbusters 2, I might put Ghostbusters 2 in on retrospect. I think I might put that in. I think I'm going to, because I had a look at that again and went, oh, that's really bad, isn't it?
So
I think on retrospect, I'm pulling Ghostbusters 2 up.
Okay, yeah.
To put it in there.
You are allowed.
Because I didn't vote for that one, but I think now I should have. There was Greg Norman's Ultimate Golf.
The shark is back.
The shark is back. He's angry because every time he moves, it has to be redrawn. Or it's like, game is stupid. And there was World Cup Italia 90. But as we've already discussed, it's not a terrible game. It's just a terrible license.
Yes, it was.
So maybe it should go in there. I don't know, but maybe not. No. The 4, though, that we have at the top are Monty Python's Flying Circus, Sabutio, Daley Thompson's Super Test, and now Ghostbusters 2.
Okay.
Interesting thing. So, Daley Thompson's Super Test was originally in Well, the history of that game is weird and varied, and I looked into it and tried to find it. It didn't. It was originally supposed to come out in 1985. It did not. It appeared on compilations all over the place, and then sometimes it didn't, because there are pictures of it on certain compilations. And then I've spoken to people and I've gone, I've got that compilation. It's not on it.
Yeah.
So God knows what happened to it. And then suddenly it just appeared on budget in 1990. Yeah. And the problem with it is it's just a hypersports asset swap. It
is. I mean, one of the key problems is that Daley Thompson is, of course, a black guy, and I think there's only one black guy in it for one of the events, and I think the rest of it's all pretty sort of pretty clear white guys. Which
it's the hypersports sprites.
Yeah, and that ain't good. I don't know what's going on with it, but it is shocking, really.
Yeah, that's not good.
No, and Daley Thompson was angry about that, I'll wager. He pole vaulted around for hours for that.
He did. And he's fast. I mean, he can run 100 meters in about 10 seconds or so.
Yeah, you can't get away from him.
He's not going to. He's going to chase you down. So that's Daley Thompson's Super Test. I think that's the reasons why in there. Monty Python's Flying Circus. Graham, why have you picked?
So I picked that. Monty Python's Flying Circus because it's a bad Monty Python game. Now, there are people that really like it, but this was fundamentally Rick Dangerous with Monty Python-ish graphics thrown at it. None of it stuck. The characters they chose were the obscure things out of Monty Python, so it didn't even have a real proper Monty Python sort of vibe to it, which is a bit shocking. And then, of course, the levels itself were awful. It didn't lend itself to be kind of a weird sort of Cybernoid-esque type game, really.
No.
So you had a part platform game that didn't work, but it just wasn't, of all the things it could have been and should have been, it should have been a point and click. I mean, it's asking to be made as a point and click game with that kind of level of
through
crazy.
The Python universe.
Yeah, exactly. But because they didn't decide to do that, they just turned it into this half-assed side-scrolling nonsense. And it didn't scroll, did it? It push-scrolled as well.
Ugh.
It's not a good Monty Python game. And of course, it was another downport. The Amiga one had more Python stuff about it, which makes sense in that. But what it was really was a Terry Gilliam-ish preview in medium res. And nobody wanted that and nobody asked for it. And that bloody music in it haunts me. So no. Absolute license. No, and Monty Python, what we said at the time was Monty Python was 1970s and it still had currency and still does, but it had currency then. So this was a licensed catastrophe because out of all the things you could make an obscure, abstract game from with all sorts of crazy ideas, and we've even seen them, including things like the previously mentioned Heat Seeker, you could do any of those things. They chose to do the most lame thing they possibly could, and in doing so, took away the very thing that makes Monty Python, the very thing, the humor and the obscure sort of absurdity of it all. Take those two things out, well, then what are you really doing? That's not a Monty Python game. It's a licensed catastrophe. So that's why I put it in there.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, it's dreadful, isn't it? And Monty Python were, for their time when they came out, they were original, they were unusual, they were cutting edge, they were, they were revolutionary. They sort of redefined what comedy was and the way it was. They were a British institution, and then they were just, the video game came along and just reduced it to a boring push scroll.
Yep,
fly along as a fish thing. Just completely missing the point. And I get it. It's clear what happened. The core designs obviously had the Rick Dangerous engine and just went, right, well, we'll just churn this out. It doesn't matter. Yep. It's just a quick book. And I just wish that someone like Lucasfilm or someone like that had got hold of it.
Yeah.
Could you imagine a Lucasfilm Monty Python game?
Yeah, I mean, later down the line with the point and clicks, we said, didn't we? It was...
Secret of Monkey Island, Simon the Sorcerer.
Yeah. Simon the Sorcerer was done with Eric Idle's voice in it. But the Secret of Monkey Island proved that you can do obscure, silly.
Yeah.
And that's nothing if not a mixture of Monty Python and probably the Muppets a little bit.
Yeah, and you already had that. And you already had that stuff in Maniac Mansion and Day of the Tentacle.
You did, yeah.
So it'd already been done. They proved it with tests. So, and I think there's even a Colour of Magic point and click. Is there a Colour of Magic, the Terry Pratchett one?
Yeah, I think so, probably.
I think there might be one of those as well. There's those kind of things which are all sort of borrowing from that Python heritage and lineage.
Yeah.
And this is just not. And it's...
Even dare I say Frankie Goes to Hollywood as a game concept is more akin to that kind of Monty Python crazy in the sense that you're going into different sort of houses and there's different mini games. That's more Monty Python and sort of leaning on that than Monty Python does. How do you get it that wrong? Well, you don't really care.
Thinking about it, if you imagine that Frankie Goes to Hollywood supplanted with Python stuff of wandering around the Gumby houses and then finding, a game of No One Expects the Spanish Inquisition or the Philosopher's Football and all the things that, the great little things like that that could have been turned into little mini games. I think there's, but that would have taken effort. And not just utilising the engine that you just created for Rick Dangerous 1 and 2.
I mean, and I suppose my final thought on this is, if you just watch something like The Now for Something Completely Different, if that isn't a tapestry of ideas for you, I mean, there's even upper class Twitter of the year if you want a sports type of game, or there's silly mini game shows and silly adverts, and I'll say no more about it, but you know what? If you've missed the boat with that massively, and therefore you end up with this, which is not good.
Yeah. Sabutio is just a plain, just bad idea. It's a bad idea. No, Sabutio is not a bad idea. Sabutio is a great idea because it's this tactile, physical, fun thing they do in the social aspect, like we said with loads of board games. And as we've said with loads of board games and those kind of things, when you transport that onto a digital platform, it loses everything that makes it great. Everything. Yeah. And we said at the time, a sim of a sim. It just seems a bit pointless.
Completely. I mean, these board games to C64, they don't make good transitions. Pictionary, I think, was another one we had at some point.
Yeah, I think the only good one we've had is that Trivial Pursuit one where you blasted off in space. And there's a couple of Trivial Pursuit ones that have been all right. Yeah. But aside from that.
But no, Sabutio is and it is a license catastrophe because that's a license that could have and should have deserved a lot better than that. And they were charging full price for it. So it's deservedly in that list.
Yeah.
We've kind of addressed Daley Thompson. So Ghostbusters 2 then, 3 short levels of crap.
Just dreadful. Going down, he's going down to the sewers, walking along as the Statue of Liberty, and then the isometric horror of the Vigo bit. Just what were they? Oh God, Lord!
And especially on the back of Ghostbusters, the first game, which was a C64 classic.
Yes. Yeah.
So, talk about slapping every C64 owner across the face. I mean, goodness me.
I mean, yeah, the thing with the original Ghostbusters, obviously it was a Car Wars or something, wasn't it? It was a different game that David Crane had designed that then they reskinned to be a Ghostbusters game, but it fitted the Ghostbusters ethos of going around, driving around, shooting up ghosts, running a business, that kind of thing. I think everything about Ghostbusters 2 was misjudged. The film is misjudged, the soundtrack is misjudged, the game is misjudged, everything. Ghostbusters 2 is one of those huge missteps that should have been much better, but it was it never worked as well as it should have done in any capacity. And the game is just it's the crap 3-month-old cherry on a cake that's been stomped into the floor.
Yeah,
so
no, I agree. I mean, if I'm gonna if we're gonna sort of summarize and try and put these into some kind of triplicate, I think I potentially have Monty Python as probably the worst one because it's the least good license out of all of them in terms of what it's trying to aim for. I think Daley Thompson's perhaps I don't know with Daley Thompson's it just wasn't. I'm not sure what it was. I know, and it wasn't really a Daley Thompson game. I think that was something that had been bastardized from someone else's game and they just kind of shoot it together and somehow it worked when they pressed run. So I don't think there's been much thought to that. So I think I'd probably put Ghostbusters 2 a close second because that's another big license. Ghostbusters was massive. Yes, Ghostbusters 2 was delayed and it had its problems, but the Ghostbusters franchise was enormous.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to get Ghostbusters right. You just have to have people catching ghosts fundamentally or tie that into the kind of film. Problems with the game stem from the film because the film isn't really about anything.
Actually, yeah, when you think about the game, you don't actually catch ghosts. You don't bust any ghosts. You go down a pipe, you walk along as the Statue of Liberty, and then you spray shit at a painting.
But isn't that exactly what happens in the film? The film, you don't catch ghosts either. Well, that's kind of
I
the
would
problem.
have thought that at least if I had that sequence in the courtroom where there's the two ghosts spring out in the courtroom.
Yeah, there's that
so there
one
are
bit.
bits.
Well, one bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
The rest of it is kind of a mixture of ideas about painting and just lots. You can see there's lots of different ideas come together, and that's kind of plays out in the game. I think Sabutio is it is a catastrophe,
but I don't think it fits. I don't think it fits as bad as the other three.
I think it's difficult to place Sabutio. I think the what's wrong with it is it should never have been made like that, and that isn't a licensed catastrophe. It's not a catastrophe because
it does work.
Yeah,
you can play. It's really boring.
Yeah, and it's not as good as playing Sabutio.
No, and it's got all the flicks and things like that you want to do. It's just utterly pointless.
So I think I'd put Monty Python's Flying Circus at the top of the list because I think it's the least out of all of the materials you had to make a licensed game. They failed, and there's a lot there. There's 30 years worth of stuff: movies, animations, books, TV shows, audio versions, radio performances, live shows, and they couldn't make a decent game off all of that. That's a catastrophe. I think I would then put second in that list, I would put Ghostbusters 2, because you had all of the Ghostbusters, all of the materials about Ghostbusters, all the characters, and you couldn't make a decent film, let alone but a decent game out of that either. And then third, I'd put Daley Thompson's Super Test, because you couldn't make a game. So you hijacked other people's sprites and then included characters in the Daley Thompson game that weren't black, which is, I think, inexcusable, really. You can't really do that. That's not nice, and it's not fair.
No.
No. He was an amazing sports personality, and at the time, it was the top of his game. He was one of our only decathletes who did amazingly well. He had other games that celebrated him. So this was should never have been put out there. But I think that's, for me, that's the three.
Yes, I agree. I agree. I think Monty Python's Flying Circus is such a waste. It's just one area where you can do, when we were, like you said, Heatseeker, we just had a load of weird games. So the one area where you can do something weird and keep it kind of coherent and playable and do something interesting with it is that digital space. And they wasted that entire license and did nothing with it. And I think that call of Frankie Goes to Hollywood is actually something I was trying to sort of put together in my head. And I think you've just nailed it there. Like, that could have been the template for this. As a Gumby wandering around, finding the different bits to the different kind of games and things like that. And I think that would have been really interesting and really fun and an enjoyable thing. And for whatever reason you're trying to do, whether trying to put together an entire brain of a Gumby, and playing the bits gives you a bit of the brain. There you go. We've written a better game for what this could have been in like 5 minutes than what they turned out, which was just utterly not Monty Python. There's nothing apart from some blurry visuals. So I agree. And I think Ghostbusters 2 is a runner-up. I sort of pulled that up, and I think you're right. I think that sits in there. And Daley Thompson's Super Test is just a woeful mess of a horror of a thing that I can't. No wonder it was buried.
Yeah.
No wonder it was buried. I'm surprised it was ever unearthed and released, if I'm perfectly honest. So, Graham, would you like to announce the winner of our licensed catastrophe?
The winner of the licensed catastrophe award from the Zapped the Past podcast during their Golden Breadbin Awards is Monty Python's Flying Circus. Music.
Someone just needs to stamp a foot on this game.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, should have. Yeah, it's tragic.
Tragic.
They clearly got bored doing that and went off and made Rick Dangerous 2 instead.
Yeah, clearly, because it's rubbish. And there we go. So that's the licensed catastrophe. We have one more award left. Let's get to it. And that award is, of course, it's the big one. It is the final one. It is the best game for 1990. We put our thinking caps on. We looked at the list of games for the year. The list is remarkably small.
Yeah, it is.
Considering what was in there. There was the one that didn't make it. And I can understand. I mean, I'll give it its due. It's a good little game, this. It just doesn't stand up against the other four that are in here. That one was Quick Snacks, which I think is a fun game. Good. It's a really fun little game, and go play it because it is very good.
That might win if we had an award for kind of best surprise. That might be one of them. It'd be a nominee, I think.
Yeah, but the 4 games we have to try and see which is the best game for 1990. We have Midnight Resistance, Die Hard, Retrograde, and Flimbo's Quest. So,
well, one out of those 4 was a complete surprise because Die Hard I'd never even heard of.
2 were a complete surprise to me.
So, I've played some of the others. I certainly played Retrograde before. Flimbo's Quest I'd seen and was aware of. Midnight Resistance I had not played on the C64, or at least not knowingly, but I probably had seen it because it came out on a demo cassette or demo thing somewhere, I seem to recall. But I hadn't played it to any great extent. And Die Hard, like I said, I'd never even heard of that or this version of it that came out. So 4 very different styles of games as well in many ways.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I'd never played. I knew Midnight Resistance in the arcade. Not very sort of au fait with it. So the C64 version was coming right at the very end. I knew it had a good reputation, but I didn't quite understand why. But then I understood why. Die Hard was unusual because, again, I think Die Hard feels like could be this year's Project Firestart.
Yes,
because I think it owes a lot to that game. But I think in that case, Retrograde was the biggest surprise for me because it's a looter shooter in 1990, a genre that we just hadn't seen at all, or was even aware that those kind of things existed back then. Very I mean, I know it takes is it Fantasy Zone, the Sega arcade game, but that just basically is the kind of format of the flying around bit. Retrograde adds loads of stuff. And Flimbo's Quest. I'd knew of it, I'd heard of it. I didn't know what it was. To find out it was like Hawkeye done right, and just a really, really good sort of like enjoyable cutesy platformer was a bit of a surprise. So this is a tough one.
It is. I mean, you can look because when it's the best game, it's got to be the best at everything that it's aiming to do.
Okay.
Right. And we said this about the previous Best Game Awards. These have got to be, it's not just about it being good at a thing or good at one thing. This has got to be all the factors coming together. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best in all the factors, but all the factors collectively make it the best. So Midnight Resistance, it's very much a Green Beret type engine, if you like, really. But in 1990, a really good arcade conversion, one that stuck to its guns and did all the things that Golden Axe didn't manage to achieve, with the exception of sound. But even then, the sound is pretty good. I mean, it was still in the nominations. Excellent. But it managed to cram all of the arcade in there. The compromises that it had to make were very few and far between. There weren't actually that game-breaking or anything like it, compared to, say, Golden Axe, where it was one enemy at a time. That's not a problem with the Midnight Resistance. It plays like a really good 8-bit version of an arcade game. And I'd align that with not so much the SNES, obviously, but with the NES and the other 8-bit consoles at the time, which were kind of, taking over at this point, really. Mm-hmm. It's easily the equal of those in terms of the animations and the style. It's got a very good vibe about that. It wouldn't look out of place on one of those early consoles easily.
Mm-hmm.
A very good game. Die Hard, on the other hand, a very good version of how to do a film tie-in. Ghostbusters 2, take note.
Yeah.
Now, Die Hard, you wouldn't instinctively look at Die Hard and go, that'll make a great C64 game. And it would be easy to fall into the trap of making it like Midnight Resistance or making it a run and gun. And you could have easily fallen into that trap. But no, they actually stuck to the film, and there's some really nice details. The fact that they follow you around when you pick the radio up. There's loads of little details in Die Hard that is easy to overlook. There's all going on behind the scenes. And it's actually a really good version. You play the film. Easy to forget that. Retrograde is a powerhouse. I mean, everything that comes together that you want to come together in a shoot 'em up happens in Retrograde. It's amazing to look at. The sound effects are brilliant. There is no sprite problems in that game. There is stuff flying around. When you upgrade, you feel the power of your upgrades.
Yeah.
And you can go and choose where you want them. You design your upgrades. It's unheard of. How many games have we played? Shoot-up games have we played when you collect you shoot the thing, it drops the egg, you collect the egg, and then you can choose from speed up or triple shot or... Here, you can go into the shop and you can kit yourself up how you want. Back shot, front shots, 3 this way, 2 that way. Shoot, it's an amazing thing, that. Mm-hmm. And like you rightly point out, pretty much unheard of. I mean, there's very few games where you've got upgrade trees like that. Maybe one of the Braybrook games a little bit, but not many, and certainly not in that way.
Yeah, Morpheus, I suppose, was the only one, but Morpheus was clunky.
Yeah, like I said, it's maybe not perfect, but it does have that kind of hints of that. But then you've also got the whole underground part of the game, which is easy to overlook. So you might think and look at it's just a side-scrolling shoot. Well, there's more to it than that. So Retrograde, and of course, the production of Retrograde. It's a properly produced, slick-looking thing. And then you've got Flimbo's Quest, which is another properly produced, slick-looking game. Beautifully drawn graphics, really nice sprites, really good idea for a game. They're of different genesis, but I think, if I'm going to be honest, I don't think Flimbo's Quest is probably, out of those 4, the game that I would put in the top 3.
I think Flimbo's Quest does one thing and does it well, But we've kind of seen it before in Hawkeye.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas Retrograde is forward-thinking, multiple types of games, all that kind of stuff you got going on. Die Hard is a really clever sort of retelling of a film, which we haven't really seen anything. And Midnight Resistance is a multi-type thing with loads of different scrolling and stuff going on with an arcade conversion. So,
I mean, if you go from a kind of a start to finish kind of, so an end-to-end journey of those games. So Midnight Resistance has everything, including the end sequence that's in the arcade, and it matches the same. So if you don't rescue all the people, then you don't get all of them in your little waving party at the end. Die Hard goes all the way through to Hans Gruber flying off the building and all the rest of that. So you've got all of that in the game as well. I think Retrograde, I think it has an ending. I'm not 100% sure whether it's like a continuous, but it has an ending as well. Then you can loop around and keep building up and doing stuff like that. Thunderbird's Quest, another one. They are all end-to-end journeys. Now, the question then becomes, okay, out of those end-to-end journeys, how much fun did I have? And I have to say, again, I love Thunderbird's Quest, but it's not as much fun as the other three, and for different reasons. Thunderbird's Quest gets a little bit samey. You could say the same about Retrograde, but Retrograde has but you can change how that game operates around you, and you can always just run along the ground punching things. Never a bad thing. Whereas Thunderbird's Quest is limiting in that way.
And you have to do that in Retrograde as well, because the way Retrograde is structured is that obviously you've got the above ground, below ground, you have to do, and then you've got the end boss for each level. And then you get to the next level and your weapons are woefully inadequate. So you have to then, and the way it sort of structures it's doling out of the weapons. So the first level you only have a couple, so you have side and radial, I think, and then you get the later levels, more weapons become available to you, which are stronger and more powerful. So you're constantly on an upgrade, but that upgrade is balanced by the enemies and stuff that you're up against. So you're never overpowered until you are overpowered, and when you are overpowered, because you've spent quite a bit of time to leveling up, it's awesome. It's so good.
Absolutely. So I think, if I'm going to look at three, so I'm going to rule Thunderbird's Quest out just because I think it's great, but I don't think it's best game material really not in that league. And that leaves us Midnight Resistance, Die Hard, and Retrograde. Now I'm going to say that I think Die Hard is a great game, but you have to like Die Hard, and you have to know a little bit about Die Hard, because if you didn't, you may not get as much out of that experience. If you're just playing a game that's about people, terrorists attacking a building and stuff, and you're not overly familiar. Yes, I know it's set in Die Hard land and everything else, but I think you need to have a little bit of Die Hard knowledge. We appreciate Die Hard looking at it now because we've seen the film and experienced it many times and something else. I don't know that really at the time, and also a question of accessibility springs to mind. I mean, who saw it? Where was it available? I don't remember seeing Die Hard C64 game anywhere in the UK as far as I wasn't looking for it, granted. So I think that if it comes to the accessibility of it, and that means both the availability and getting into the game, I think Die Hard's going to struggle against the game where you can just pick up the joystick and blast stuff. Now, what I'd say then is I put Die Hard in at number 3. That leaves Retrograde and Midnight Resistance. And the only thing I would say that probably keeps the Retrograde at the top of that compared to Midnight Resistance is that Midnight Resistance is a tried and tested formula. It's Green Beret. Bigger sprites, but it's Green Beret. Retrograde is a bit of a unique experience. It's doing something that not even the arcades were really tackling at that point. Midnight Resistance had that fancy control system, and it did work for the first time ever, but it had it in the arcade. Retrograde's trying a new version of an upgrade tree, which you don't... Nowadays, it's we take it for granted. There's loads of games fundamentally built around that there's entire genres of games built around the construct of that. If you think about the Command and Conquers of this world and the games with the big upgrade trees and things. So I think Retrograde is doing something very early, very unique. Now, I have to say, as much as I think Retrograde's an amazing thing, it's not necessarily my favorite game ever or anything like that.
No.
And I tend to get a little bit bored of games like that, but that's not a failing of that game. That's because that's just a kind of me in my older age, and I get a bit tired of those kind of things. But put that in the hands of somebody nowadays, who plays these games a lot, like my teenage lad who plays these games, the games that promote that kind of continuous upgrade and blasting through and just grinding and doing all of those things. And it's just fodder for them. It's a different ball game. So I think if I'm going to position those in a sort of best top 3, I would say Retrograde, I think, has to be at the top because it's the best game of its type and it's doing things that those other games simply don't do and should have probably been thinking about. How many of those shoot-'em-up games, side-scrolling or otherwise, did we see that just kept doing the same thing over and over again and not pushing anything forward and not even necessarily, in some instances, stepping backward into dog shit, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Retrograde, number 1, because it's all of those things, as I've said. Midnight Resistance, a really good number 2, because it's a brilliant arcade conversion. It's end-to-end, and it's a good version of the arcade at last. And then I would put Die Hard at number 3. And it's only there really because Die Hard is a great idea, great game, really good film conversion. But you need you'd need to like it, Die Hard, to really get into it, I think. And if you didn't have that, I don't know really how much fun you're going to have with it. Yeah. But that's just my take. What about you?
Well, I thought I was going to have to fight harder to get Retrograded at number 1, if I was honest, because I know at the time you were a bit like umming and ahhing about it, and I was massively, hugely into it, and I have been all year, sort of things. Well, all since I've been playing it, I've been going back to it and playing it on and off, sort of thing, because I think it's a brilliant idea, and it does have that thing where, it is doing something different, and it pains me to see that. And I'm sorry, I'm going to say this. It's far better than Creatures. It's way, way better than when I read that interview with them and they were like, oh, we were so fed up of doing Space Marines. We just wanted to do something cute. That's fine as long as the game's as good. The game Creatures is not as good a game as Retrograde. Retrograde was they like walked along a track and they were there and they'd done it and then they stepped back and went off and did something else, not knowing where that loot, shoot, constant grind, upgrade tree could have led them. And it sort of pains me. That's like a stem of the branch of the tree that doesn't really get sort of pulled until much later in game design. And things like now you've got things like auto scrolling shooters like Vampire Survivors and all those kind of stuff. Which are absolutely dopamine hits as you play them, and that's what I got from this. And I did not get that from many C64 games, because once the opening sequences, you're like shooting stuff and dodging, and you get your first couple of power ups, and then you start blasting more, and then you start knocking more stuff out, and you get more weapons. And once the screen is filling with bullets and enemies and stuff, and no slowdown or anything. No, Retrograde is so far ahead of what other stuff is doing at this time. I think Die Hard is, but Die Hard as well is built upon Project Firestar. I think it's very similar in sort of style and stylistics. I think they saw that and went, right, we're going to do that. There's a bit more 3D and stuff in it like that. And Midnight Resistance, it's just a cracking conversion. It's just a crackingly good arcade conversion, which is finally we got one. But yeah, I've got no complaints about Retrograde getting the best game of the year. I think it's head and shoulders above pretty much everything else, because it just came along and did something that no other game did before, no other game has done since, and it did it in such a. I mean, they did, what was it, Cyberdyne? We looked at Cyberdyne Warrior as well, didn't we?
Which was kind of Retrograde light, wasn't it?
Which was the Retrograde platforming bit. And then they obviously added on the shooting bit, which they took from what's the game called? The Sega one. I can't remember what it's called now. But they took that and then they added that on top and then made it into a much bigger game and much better. And you could see that evolution. And it's such a shame that they went. I mean, they end up with Monsters in Mayhem and Monsterland or whatever. So. And Creatures 2 and things like that. But I would have just loved them to. I'd have loved to have seen them take Retrograde that next step. Seen what they could have done, built upon it, and sort of taken it into a, what could they have done with the tech of the rest of the things that they were doing, and maybe something like that. Don't know. But Retrograde certainly my favourite game of the year by a country mile. And then I think Midnight Resistance and Die Hard are a good 2 and 3. I'll go with that.
So, and as per usual, of course, we book the Zzap trend because, of course, their top games were Turrican and Space Rogue, neither of which made it into our list.
I was thinking about Space Rogue. And Space Rogue I think we should give that a sort of a mention, because I think it's not our type of game, and I think it's a very, very interesting game, Space Rogue, and what it was doing at the time, again, quite big. We saw this with someone else as well that we looked at that was quite unusual in that kind of big quest type thing. There was another game we played, I can't remember what it is off the top of my head.
There's a few dotted through the year. I mean, I would put them. I mean, it's obviously it didn't score as well for many different reasons, but. There's games that are just... Space Rogue was a big old game. It came as a big surprise. It just wasn't... We don't generally like the space tradery type games. Maybe that's just us and maybe it's the thing. But it's good. And like you say, maybe it deserves to be kind of an honorary mention of, it's not best game, but it's certainly different. I'd put Zombie in the same category. It might look like a piece of crap, but it's the beginning. It's a very... Ubisoft's very first zombie survival game. I mean, that's an important thing.
Yeah.
That they went back to it and made Zombie U and many other games. And how many other zombie survival games are there now that, I mean, there's hundreds of them. So, these early pioneering things like the Space Rogues and like the Zombies, they deserve a mention. but it's not the best game of the year. They're just very interesting games of the year.
Yeah,
which is,
I think Space Rogue obviously leads to down the line from Space Rogue. You've got things like your Mass Effects and or your big
completely.
space RPGs and stuff like that, which you can see sort of open up. But yeah, I'll give it a mention. But I think for us, I think those three, Retrograde, Midnight Resistance, and Die Hard, were the three that I was most surprised by all three of them. I'd already heard that Flimbo's Quest was supposed to be good, and I knew Midnight Resistance, but I was expecting, people raving about Midnight Resistance, but I was so surprised when that was actually as good as it damn well was. When I first started playing it, I was like, well, this is a bit fun. I even messaged you, when we were doing it, and that doesn't happen very usually. The messages are like, oh God, wait till you see this. But I actually messaged you going, Midnight Resistance is a bit good.
I think the absence of Turrican is going to surprise some people because Turrican has a very fierce reputation. But I would simply say this: Turrican is not Turrican 2, and Turrican 2 is the one that really gets all of the attention because it's got that music and it's got the gameplay, and it's an Amiga game, and it's very famous on the Amiga.
And we'll get to
Turrican is quite good, but it's not as good as Turrican 2, and I think that's easy forgotten. It don't get me wrong. Again, it's another powerhouse of code. But it's not as good as some of the others.
No, I had some issues with Turrican in the fact of I don't like the instant deaths, blind jumps. Some of the level design is the issues I had with that.
But I agree with you. And like I said, because those things aren't present in Turrican 2. So that's great. And similarly, I think with something like Creatures, I mean, we haven't got Creatures in the best game, which is probably going to frustrate and annoy people, given that it's from the same people that made Retrograde. But I would argue that they do better if in that cutesy kind of side-scrolling, they come along with Monsters in Mayhem Land or Mayhem in Monsterland, whatever it is. And that's probably going to be the best version of what's available at that time on the C64. We'll never look at it, but they do better with that. Retrograde, they got a good formula right.
Yeah, they did.
And you know what? You look at the amount going on the screen at any given moment on that game, and you think that's how you do it. That's a 1990 game. It looks like one. It plays like one. It feels like one, and it was right at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And there was right there, and this is what's frustrated me about 1990, just to go on another mini rant, but this is what's frustrated me about 1990 a little bit, is that right there you had a boilerplate template for how to do shooters. And how many other versions of Retrograde did we see? None. They all turned out the same how many top-down crap scrollers can we get in 1 year? Loads of them in 1990. Yeah. How many side-scrolling shoot-em-ups are there? There's quite a few. How many Retrogrades? One.
Yep. Well, Took something like Defender, added on platforming, did it all stuff, put on an upgrade tree, boom. Yeah. So, Graham, would you like to announce the best game of our best game of the year?
The best game for 1990, as voted for by the Zapped podcast in the Golden Breadbin Awards, is Retrograde from Thalamus and the Rolands.
Well done, Rolands.
Well deserved, actually. Well deserved. Didn't I feel like you'd have to convince me more? It was a great game. I just wasn't quite my cup of tea.
That's why I thought, because I thought you'd want to. I thought that's why. But
and in keeping with this podcast's remit, of course, as well, is that we said before, and this is what we were being critical of Zzap around. Actually, is that I can acknowledge Retrograde's greatness. It doesn't mean I think it's great fun to play, but that doesn't mean it's not great. And there's a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I'm lucky that I thought it was Ace.
No, it is good. I remember playing it at the time, but it's one of those games. I remember getting it on a cracked version many, when we're talking years ago. I don't think the cracked versions, a lot of those you get that were, they were sent via the post from God knows where. The discs had been through God knows how many different back of vans and smashed them. By the time you got them, sometimes they had giant dints in them and all sorts of stuff. They're not known for their robustness, these floppy 3.25-inch discs, are they? No. They're not going to withstand a good heavy hit with something with a bit of a point on it, and that's it, done.
Yeah, but there we go. That's our best game. That's it.
It is.
That's our awards done. Pretty much.
Right, thanks for that. See you later. Bye.
Bye. Actually, we did reach out to our Patreons and asked them, as we always do, and we asked them for their awards. We did get some responses. We said you can have whatever award you want, create your own. We'll give them a few boilerplate ones, but we'll see what they came up with. So let's move on and let's get through into our Patreon awards. So our first set of awards comes from Lee Dove on our Discord. Lee says the best game, Retrograde.
Well, yeah, we agree.
Bit of an underrated gem, this, and as someone who loves the gameplay loop of Borderlands, I've been back to this quite a bit over the year. Worst game was Hard Driving. Took a technically impressive but dull coin-op and in 2 weeks created something that is barely a game.
Yeah, the key phrase there, 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Best visuals, Creatures.
Okay, yeah, it is good.
It's a pity the game is too hard and too prescriptive, but there's some real joy in the colour and animation of Clyde and his pals.
We gave it best. Did we give it best?
We did.
We did.
Best sound, Ghouls and Ghosts.
Oh,
so it's a narrow. There's a narrow window of titles, I think, for this year
so far.
Yeah, Ghouls and Ghosts. Sid is pretty amazing in the right hands. But the title track to the game must be one of the best tunes coaxed out of the C64. Raindrops, howling winds, sampled bells. It's a masterpiece and perfect for a Halloween re-listen. Some of the alternate awards: Best Official Arcade Conversion, Midnight Resistance.
Yeah.
I mean, if we had a best conversion, we would probably put Midnight Resistance in there. It's the second best game of the year.
Yeah, I agree.
Not to spoil things for a future episode, but when this was written, it's a conversion that shouldn't have worked given the control scheme. One of the best on the C64 with a demo so good about the full game. Best Unofficial Arcade Conversion, Insects in Space.
Yeah, was it Defender? Was it?
Yeah, clone of Stargate Defender 2 with that weird, sensible quirkiness. Best Obscure Gem, Quick Stacks. Well, we mentioned it in the best games.
We did mention it, yeah.
The game is completely different from every other version of the game and all the better for it. Compulsive stuff. Most influential game, SimCity.
I forgot completely about SimCity. But...
yeah, it was there, wasn't it? All started here on the C64.
It was there.
Built on the bones of the building editor Wheelwright used to make Raid on Bungling Bay.
That's fair.
Best end sequence, Golden Axe.
It is the same as the arcade, more or less.
Yeah, kept the weird meta ending from the arcade. The conversion that deviated the most from the original, or what even is this, goes to Carrier Command.
Yeah, 3D to top down.
Yeah, swapping the 3D for 2D. The only thing this shares with the original is the box art, the scenario, and the menu system. Yeah. And the brownest game is Dynasty Wars.
Cool, that's true.
So much brown for what was a vivid game in the arcades.
Golden Axe gives that a good run for its money, though, I think.
It really does, yeah. Dysentery Wars, as it should be called.
Dysentery Wars and Golden Brown.
Yeah. Texture like sun. AL82 Retro gave us some as well. Best game, Retrograde.
Okay, yeah.
Of all the games created by Apex Computer Productions, Retrograde remains my favourite. The brothers Rowland, along with Robin Ellis, created a remarkably polished product, combining excellent artwork and coding routines to produce shoot 'em up one of the very best on the Commodore 64.
Yep.
But that's not why Retrograde is special. I believe its significance is perhaps completely big coincidence. The fact that it contains near-perfect examples of not one, but two mechanics, which are so prevalent in today's modern games. The core gameplay loop of killing enemies for cash to buy bigger guns is the same perpetual loop of dopamine-infused repetition, now present in practically every action RPG since Diablo. The shop where you deck out your mercenary with increasingly deadly weaponry is recognisably one of the earliest incarnation of the upgrade tree, a feature now ubiquitous in the games today. Splashing the cash to outfit you're definitely not a space marine bounty hunter is hugely satisfying. Watching bullet sponge enemies which once shrugged off your attacks vanish under a bombardment of plasma bolts and fireballs feeds an addiction that's near impossible to escape. While it not be to everyone's taste, if you enjoy the ground, Retrograde could well be the last C64 game you ever play. It's a dangerously compelling experience, complete with top-level production values and a banging soundtrack. I maintain Steve Rowland is one of the C64's most underrated seditions, and the Retrograde score is among his finest work.
It is very good.
Best arcade conversion, Midnight Resistance. Every year, developers and publishers continue to pump out an endless stream of effluent-soaked conversions of arcade games for the C64. The reality is the bulk of these titles are more deserving of a Golden Shower Award, not a Golden Breadbin. But take heart, dear listener, for among the puke-stained puddles of rank regurgitations, 1990 would deliver one of the finest arcade experiences the Commodore 64 has to offer. The port of Midnight Resistance, coded, dubbed, and maestroed by the oh-so-talented folks at Special Effects, is a masterclass in design. Practically everything from the Data East original has been distilled into a package which works within the constraints of a home micro with 64K of memory, blasting your way through waves of cyborg troops, busting tanks, jets, and all manner of mechanized monstrosities with an assortment of destructive military hardware is great fun, perfectly capturing the spirit of the arcade. The armory sequence that bookend each level, requiring collection of keys to liberate guns, power-ups, and extra lives is present and correct, as are most of the levels. The dreaded multi-load is a bit of a burden for tape users, but with so many levels on offer, this was to be expected. Most impressive of all is the fact that developers reworked the rotary dial control scheme, making it work with a standard single-button joystick. After what seems like a never-ending nightmare of crass conversions, Midnight Resistance was worth the wait. It's a class act, fully deserving of the 90%, and I would say more than 90%, awarded by Zzap, and remains one of my favourite games for the system.
Yeah, no argument.
Yeah. Finally, we have some awards from Dr. Goggles.
Dr. Goggles.
Good old Dr. Goggles. First up, we have the Should Have Waited for the Amiga Version award is Hard Driving. What was the point in attempting this on the humble 64? Like its counterpart, Stunt Car Racer, the Amiga was a much more competent machine for this type of game. Someone should really have said, "Oi, you, no," to the developers. Another game for which the Amiga was a better machine for was SimCity, maybe. This is great. Why didn't I ever play it back in the day award? Insects in Space.
Yeah, it's good
okay.
Game,
it was a Zzap cover, but somehow I missed this one. Very well done, Defender Drop Zone style game with great fairy graphics.
And in that Fourth Dimension, wasn't it, compilation? So you got 4 games out of that.
That was great. Yeah, it was a good compilation. That was.
Yeah.
The Harumph Zap to the Past trashed my favourite game again award. That's Creatures. We didn't trash it.
We didn't trash it. We just said it wasn't the best. It's not very good, but it's got nice graphics. I think that's fair.
Oh, come on now. Okay, it might not have aged all that well, but it was a groundbreaking for visuals, which we said. Inventiveness, the torture screens, cuteness and fun when it came out. Maybe one you would think more highly of if you played it when it came out. I just want to come back to that because we were talking about Creatures earlier and I said I would, and I'd seen what he'd written. The problem with Creatures is that mentioning the torture screens is all well and good. I played the game for 2 hours and didn't reach one.
Yeah, it's too hard.
Because it's too hard to get to them. So if your best parts of your game are unreachable within 2 hours, and this is a ceaseful, I'd argue you've got a problem. There's some issue with the game design which has gone badly wrong there. The torture screens, if they're that good, put them front and center somewhere else. And I know maybe a lot of people played them. They were on the demo. They were on the Zzap cover tape, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
So I get that, but my point with Creatures is that the platforming sections, which make up the 90% of the game, just not that fun.
Yeah, and a question I would ask as well. I mean, not to to cause too much trouble.
No.
Would be what makes it so cute? What's cute about it? I mean, I don't think it's that cute. Flimbo's Quest is probably, if you're looking at a game that's kind of cutesy, is more on the cutesy side. No, in that kind of Rainbow Islandsy kind of way. But I wouldn't say that Creatures was that cute, and I don't think just whatever that cave creature is. All right, it's kind of you get a free one with the game, and it's a fuzzy wuzzy or whatever.
The furry,
but just calling them those things and doing that things doesn't in of itself make the game cute. You don't do anything cute in the game. You can't even go up slopes in the game. So I don't know. Had the game involved me doing cute things as opposed to trying to stop people being tortured to death, I might agree with you. But that doesn't feel like a cutesy game. It just feels like a platform game. And not very
it's not. We're not going to go Dr. Goggles. Obviously, we're not.
No.
And we're just going. I mean, you said
disagreeing.
You said we trashed it. Some people we've had some of these comments on sort of Facebook and things like that about you should be careful about trashing these games. We're not trashing them. We've given it its dues of where we think its strengths are. But from a game design point of view, I think that even at the time, I think I would have worn off this quite quickly.
Yeah, because it's too hard.
Anyway, the Crikey and Actual Good Codemasters Game Award goes to Quick Snacks.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, it was. Simple, fun game with a flicky feel. Should they have called it a flicky simulator? Maybe. Probably the best Dizzy game on the C64. You're probably not wrong.
Subutio is a flicky simulator, and that ain't very good, so maybe avoid that.
That's true. And finally, the Just Leave It in the Arcade Award goes to Tubin and Golden Axe jointly. Both great fun in the arcades, both hopeless on the C64. Possibly there are others, but I never played them. Oh, there are others. There are many, many others. There are
Tubin
always
isn't
others.
very good in the arcade, though, actually.
My mate loves Tubin. He absolutely loves it. He adores it.
I know some people do. I've played it. I've been into the arcade club a few times and, had a go with it, and it's a bit one note for me. But that is me. That's just me. I'm not a tuber.
No, I was never a massive fan of it. The best thing about it is the arcade sound, is the Atari sound effects, which I bang on about all the time. There we go. That's our Patreon was. Thank you very much for those our contributors. It's always good to involve them and get their views on there. And as you can see, as the number of games whittles downwards, the choices tend to be a bit
whittle downwards.
A bit not homogenized, but they're a bit. I think we're in agreement. I think along certain lines, what the best of the year has been.
It's funny how it flips things on its head. The good games are easy to spot because there's so many bad ones. And now, because there's less games, the standout games are quite clear. And that's why, if you look at our worst game, we had way more games in there. We could have put more in there.
There was a lot
the best
more
games, it's quite easy to pick them out, really.
Yeah. Best films. What do you think, Graham? I've put a list here of the ones I picked out. For the best film from 1990, there was Born on the 4th of July. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Very good again.
The Witches. I know you're a big fan of The Witches.
Yeah, I like The Witches.
The Vanishing. That was very good.
Horrible. Yeah.
Gremlins 2.
Yeah, good.
Die Hard 2. Ghost.
Yeah.
RoboCop 2. Goodfellas. Exorcist 3 and Home Alone were the ones I sort of picked out. I would probably opt out of that lot for probably Goodfellas as the best film of the year.
Yeah, I'd go with Goodfellas. There's some good ones in that list, but Goodfellas is a great film and remains so.
Yeah. Best music was clearly Enigma.
So said, I believe that
Gary, Mr. Brown Sauce.
Gary, he came out and said, did he say I can't remember where he said it, but he said he thought the first 2 albums of Enigmas were good. I think he's thinking Enema, and he's thinking his first two enemas were good.
Which would actually...
And they probably were.
Well, yeah, because he did say in the second one there was less panpipes, so it probably was, yeah.
Yeah, so he had a cross of Enya and Enigma and ended up having an enema. Unfortunate that, but it does explain a great many things.
Absolutely. Moon, river.
Yeah, well, he can whistle from 2 different orifices, and that's clever.
Absolutely.
He can harmonise with himself.
He does it on stage.
He does.
He only goes on after 10 o'clock, though.
He can do bass and treble clef. Just don't ever ask him to demonstrate it, not unless you've got a dustbin.
A dustpan and mop.
Oh, yeah, a scoop, yeah.
or a good supply of poo bags from your dog.
Kitchen roll, yeah, you need the kitchen roll for that absorbent. Make sure it's the really thick stuff.
Oh, we went all episodes without making any poo jokes.
Well, we've got to have some in here, and it's for old time's sake.
It's the Golden Breadbins. There we go. Right, so what have we got coming up? I don't know. A lot of these games have completely passed me by. Some of them I put in here as big games for next year. Okay. I don't know if you're aware of some of them. I don't know, but these are the ones that have scored highly because I've already had a look, so pulled them sort of things out. So we've got Navy SEALs. Okay,
that was the film, wasn't it? The film license.
I think it was, yes. Yeah. I think that's cat only, another ocean one. It goes quite high, but we'll see how that turns out. Okay. RoboCop 2.
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Narc.
Oh, goodness me. Now, Narc is one of my favourite arcade games as well.
Yeah.
So, okay. I'm not holding out much hope for that.
No. Turrican 2.
Okay. Well, it might be interesting to see how it compares to the Amiga one.
Yeah. Something called Night Shift. I think it's from Lucasfilm.
Isn't that a song by...
it is, yes. But there's a game of it as well. Interestingly, Shadow of the Beast. Now, I was completely unaware that there was C64 versions of these. And there's another one coming up.
I'm sure that's a cartridge game because I remember seeing it on a GS64.
Quite possibly, but I didn't know there was a C64 version of it.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be that good compared to the Amiga one, but okay.
The final triumphant part of the trilogy, Last Ninja 3.
Now, that has got an amazing soundtrack for that game.
I hope so.
Oh, by the way, just before we move on, I didn't realise this till I looked the other day, that this year, by the way, I think it's either this year or, and it hasn't been reviewed in Zzap, or it's next year, I'm not sure for 100% sure, but Last Ninja Remix comes out. Which is essentially, about it, yeah. Well, Last Ninja Remix is a version of Last Ninja 2, but I didn't realise that all of Matt Gray's music is removed from Ninja Remix and replaced by the guy that did all the music for Last Ninja 3, so Rain Overhand, or how you say his name. He did the music for the Last Ninja Remix on the C64. Weird. They took Matt Gray's music out. Don't know why.
Why? Did he not get the right to it or something?
I don't know. Genuinely don't know. I noticed it the other day.
That is odd. That's weird. We've got Super Monaco GP.
Okay.
Got a high score. I think it's another racing game, so that could either be another Grand Prix circuit or it could be another Ferrari F1.
About that, but I'm wondering now we're sort of heading into Amiga territory.
I think it was an Amiga one. Something called CJ's Elephant Antics.
I don't even want to think about what that is.
I think it's a budget game. It scores quite high. Lotus Esprit Turbo Challenge.
Okay.
That was interesting because that has a lot of memories for us. I think it was the sequel. We doubled Amiga, didn't we?
Yeah, we did on the Amiga, yeah. We played that really heavily. 4
players took your Amiga around to
even
one of our friends.
Two-player game. We hammered that. That one because it was almost the equivalent of Pit Stop 2 for the Amiga, really.
Yeah,
two-player.
Really good. Swiv.
Oh, that's the demo of that was great. So
the demo was good. Shadow Dancer.
Oh, finally another. Hopefully, the cat isn't as useless in that one as in the game.
in timid alleys instead of wild streets. Something called Atomino scored highly. It's a puzzle game about atoms. Can you guess
Some
what?
dominoes?
No. Can you guess what the picture of someone is inside it?
It's bloody Einstein.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
you got it. I looked earlier. I was like, oh, God's sake! There's a version of Predator 2.
Oh God, Predator Poo.
I don't know what that's going to be like. Gauntlet 3.
I think the music for Gauntlet 3 is Tim Follin.
Yeah, I think it is. Is it Tim or Jeff? North and South. I remember that from the Amiga. That's a big strategy game, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's the problem.
I remember the Amiga one.
I think the point is by this point, the strategy games they're infiltrating the main body of the text, and we're going to be looking at some of them because we've got things like Death Knights of Kryn and stuff like that.
Oh, that's stupid, that game on the 65.
Supremacy.
Vaguely remember it.
Yeah. Exile.
No.
Wrath of the Demon. That's the other one.
On the Amiga.
Yeah, that's the other one I didn't know got a C64 version.
No, that was a massive seller on the Amiga. Pretty dull game, actually, but we'll see how it works out.
Turbocharge. That
sounds cheap.
Keys to Maramon.
That's just some keys.
Logical. It's the story of Supertramp.
That's such a good title for that. I bet that is their biography.
Yeah, it should be. Outrun Europa.
Will they get it right this time?
Don't know. Well, I mean, just too big a car, wasn't it? The unfortunately named Rodland.
Sounds like a website that I don't think anyone should be using anytime soon.
No. Speedball 2.
Okay, Speedball 2 is a great Amiga game, so it'd be interesting to see what they do with that.
I mean, the C64 Speedball was good, so
it was, yeah.
We'll see how it turns out.
Speedball 2 was another Amiga game that we hammered.
Yeah, we did. So. Yeah. Terminator 2. That's a big cartridge game, isn't it, from Ocean? That's supposed to be really quite good. Really, I remember this. I've seen the scrolling Terminator from
big,
end screen.
Big whopping stuff going on in that one.
Yeah, Smash TV.
It's an arcade conversion, isn't it? Big one.
Yeah. It's what's his face, Simulated Defender, isn't it? I think it's a Eugene Jarvis game, Smash TV.
Oh, great.
I think. Don't quote me on that, but I think it is. And finally, something called Battle Command.
Okay, that sounds like an old Atari game they found in the Arcade Obscura.
yeah. Smash TV, created by Eugene Jarvis. Yeah, I was right.
Yeah, because he did Narc as well. So
okay. Eugene Jarvis is sort of king of the arcades, isn't he? Really, always good stuff. So that's some of the big games we have coming next year. Ooh. So some of the interesting things we've got to look forward to. In regards to January, though, we normally sort of end off sort of saying what we've got coming up in the next few weeks. January is 3 episodes, keeping our sort of workload because it's crazy. We're crazy busy at work. Both of us are. So we're keeping the games down to a sort of a manageable. It's just 4 or 5 an episode. It's not in any way, shape, or form to try and stretch the podcast out. It's not. We're just basically just so busy.
We've got to. We can only. It's the only really way we can keep.
Yeah, and especially, I think the other thing as well is that you probably noticed it, but our review depth is much greater these days. Having fewer games allows us to be a bit more. It allows us to be more in depth with our reviews. If you go back and listen to some of the earlier episodes, some of the reviews are like 2 minutes long.
There's one that's a minute and a half.
Yeah. So if you think that you're not covering many games, it's like we're covering them in much more depth.
We do.
And so, back then, I can't imagine having to do 14 games in a week. So games we've got to come up for January, the 3 episodes of January, there are 13 games. So we've got things like, we've got Navy SEALs. We've got, I'll go through 3 big ones that'll lead up the next few weeks. We've got Navy SEALs, RoboCop 2 and Narc. Those are our 3 big games for the next 3 weeks. Then we've got games like Snowstrike, The Spy Who Loved Me, Amazing Spider-Man, Strider 2, Emily Hughes' arcade quiz.
Oh dear. Okay.
Days of Thunder.
Oh no.
That doesn't bode well, does it? No, Helter Skelter.
Oh gosh.
Dragon Breed.
Oh no.
Magic Land Dizzy.
Okay.
And finally Chips Challenge. Okay. Now I'm hoping that's a quiz game hosted by Eric Estrada.
I'm thinking the chances are very low.
But I want it to be.
I want it to be. I'm not sure Eric Estrada has anything to do with the C64.
So,
I never will.
John and Ponchuella and John and Ponch asking questions. It was John.
No, but what was his real name? That's not his name. What was his actor's name?
I have no idea.
We only know one.
Yeah,
we know one chip.
he was thick of blonde hair. That's all I remember.
He was. I just this one chip, but so we can only remember one of the chips.
Oh, hang on a minute. Let me have a look. Chips.
I bet his name's Dirk or something. Or
it was Larry Wilcox.
Okay.
So the show is created by Rick Nostad. Eric Estrada is he's written this. Eric Estrada has written this as macho rambunctious officer Francis Llewellyn Poncherello.
Right,
macho and rambunctious. And Larry Wilcox is his straight-laced partner, Officer Jonathan
Dibble.
John Andrew Baker.
Right, okay. They had to have all these quirky names, didn't they?
Yeah, there you go. That's Chips. Right, that's it. That's the Breadbin Awards, and that's 1990 officially done and out the way.
And with it, season 6.
And yes, that's season 6 over. 6 years of C64 games.
Unbelievable.
I know. Well over 1,000 now. Well over 1,000. Must be approaching sort of 1,200 or so, or 1,150 or something. Wow. Got any thoughts for 1991?
No, my only thought is, do you know what? There's still big licenses in amongst that list, which is a bit of a surprise. It's going to be far more newer territory to me because at a certain point amongst this, I'm Amiga all the way now. So I'm going to be playing C64 versions of games that I played more on the Amiga. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Only on the Amiga?
Yeah, in some instances, yeah, like Wrath of the Demon.
Shadow of the Beast.
I don't think I've ever seen the C64 version of that. I remember the Amiga version of Narc. I don't have good memories of buying that. So
did you buy it?
I did, because that's one of my favourite arcade games. I loved it. And on the Amiga, it sort of looked a bit like it did, but it didn't have all of the bells and whistles needed, of course. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah,
I'm interested to see how it turns out. This could be this. I mean, there's a lot of big games there, a lot of high scores. Is it the C64 inflationary mark? We don't know. There are quite a lot of games, though. I will give it that. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of episodes. There is. I think it goes up to. I don't know how many episodes. There's about 20. There's quite a lot of 3-weekers and stuff. So it will be interesting. There's probably going to be about the same amount of games we've got this year. Will what's going to be this year's retrograde? What's going to be this year's Die Hard?
I'm looking forward to certain things because I've seen Last Ninja 3 and I've heard it because it's got great music. I've never really played it that much. And so it'd be interesting to sort of go back to that. I know that I'm going to be annoyed by a ninja in broad daylight using his butt cheeks to pick up keys, but all right, I'll go with that.
It's different programming. It's Stanley Shembri this time, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I mean, it does look the part and the music on it is really good for the C64, really good. So,
well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to another year. It's all good. It's all good fun and games. If you want to get in on this, I mean, hopefully you've enjoyed this. I really enjoy doing these episodes at the end of the year. I think it's really good fun and sort of a nice way to bookend the year.
It is.
Hopefully you've enjoyed it too. If you want to sign up to our Patreon, you can do that. Patreon.com/Zapped to the Past. It doesn't cost very much. It is literally the price of a sandwich or a pint of beer or whatever. It's a little bit more than have you seen those adverts for Jane Plan?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a little bit more than a Jane Plan. So if you miss out one day of your Jane Plan, you could sign up to ours. Yes. I love that for less than the price of a takeaway coffee. We've started budgeting that way. Me and my partner, we're walking along, sort of going, "How much does that cost?" Oh, it's 3 Jane Plans. I could eat for 3 days. This podcast is not brought to you by Jane Plan, by the way. We did not endorse that product.
No, it's not.
It's not. You can go to our coffee, buy us a coffee on co-5/Zapped to the Past as well. Follow us on Twitter, on X, on whatever it's called, on Blue Sky, on Threads, on Instagram, on Facebook. We are around on all of the platforms as per usual. Send us a message. Tell us what your favourite games were. We'd love to hear them.
Yeah.
Do they tally it with ours? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know.
Yep.
I think that's it. 1990 is done. Bring on 1991, I suppose.
There we go. That's it.
There we go. So nothing further to add? We done?
No. I'm looking forward to seeing what 1991 brings. Season 7. We've got a few little surprises probably going to drop in for next year as well, like we have this year. So let's bring it on. Let's see what we're going to do. So let's get on with it and see what we're dealing with.
Indeed. So on that note, as ever, I have been Adrian Mills.
And I have been Graham Raddings.
And you've been listening to the Zapped to the Past Golden Breadbin Awards for 1990. And we will see you again soon to start 1991. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Zapped to the Past podcast. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of Commodore 64 games, as well as the music, films and TV from around the 1980s, driven, of course, by the issue of Zap 64 magazine published at that time. We will return with a whole new batch of games and stuff to talk about next week. Until then, if you want to listen to or download previous episodes of Zapped to the Past, and why wouldn't you, they can all be found on our website at zappedtothepast.com, as well as being available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, Audible, Player FM, and, well, pretty much anywhere where we can upload them. Bye. By the way, we do always love to hear from our amazing listeners, so if you'd like to contact us about anything in the podcast or beyond, you can do so by emailing us at zappedtothepast@gmail.com. We're also active on Twitter under @ZapTother, as well as Facebook, Instagram, and most social media platforms. Just search for Zap to the Past and you'll find us. Oh, and if you like the podcast and what we're doing, please do like, share, review, rate us. It really helps. Something, apparently. The Zap to the Past podcast is written and produced by Adrian Mills and Graham Raddings and recorded at Flaky Bits 2.0 Studio. All opinions expressed are those of the writers, and while we indeed love Zap 64 magazine, the Zap to the Past podcast is not affiliated with it in any way. Stay safe, see you next time, and remember, we play these games so you don't have to.